Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 11 of the Ark Podcast, and boy has it been a crazy set of stories in the news. This is some of the ones we're going to be covering in this particular episode. Welcome to the Censorship Olympics. The UK tries to outdo Australia on policing the world's internet. The ATO cracks down on Australian small business directors putting their houses in the firing line. Bill Shorten announces Australia's new digital ID system, which starts later this year. The Liberal Party HQ in New South Wales are in disarray as they fail to submit right-wing candidate forms for council, but they do submit forms for candidates that are pro-net zero. We examine Australia's disgraceful NAPLAN results. Democrats no longer are in disarray. The whole establishment has gotten behind Kamala Harris, and Elon Musk and Donald Trump break the internet, getting billions of views on their interview. And boy, do we have some phenomenal news for you guys. Just so you know, this podcast, I did the numbers in the last couple of weeks. We are actually averaging 900,000 viewers every week from all the clips and everything. And that's thanks to you guys. That's thanks to you sharing it, donating a cup of coffee every month really helps us at PayPal. And if you're listening to this, if you're really enjoying it, please give it a share, join the community. And on my right, I have got to help us meander through this topic, Dr. Stephen Shavira, who is Sky News commentator and contributor to Campion College as a senior lecturer there. I've also got another familiar face, Natalie Duma, who is a former UAP and Liberal Democrat candidate that has helped get Senator Babbitt and John Ruddick elected. And she's a dentist. She's got a phenomenal background in medicine, and she's been a really good community organizer in Sydney. On my left, I've got a new face, Julian Fayad, who to some of you may not be a new face. Julian's a business owner, a family man. He's someone that is very intelligent on marketing and with regards to tech. And next to him, we've also got Ben Britton, who was here last week as well. Ben's got a very good background, not only as a veteran in military affairs, but also with regards to tech and cybersecurity. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this week I really had to be very careful about what topics I clicked on to talk about today. One of the crazy topics that we actually decided to talk about is basically the UK wanting to censor the entire internet. We all remember what happened with regards to Australia when Bishop Murray was stabbed. Well, the UK are trying to outdo Australia with our e-safety commissar. UK Police Commissioner threatens to extradite and jail US citizens over online posts. We'll come after you. You guys can naturally understand what the Americans' reaction to that was, especially after their war for independence. Stephen, what were your thoughts when you saw this breaking on Twitter?
Well, it's the weaponization of very vague terms like hate speech and misinformation. So, for example, the commissioner said that they will come after anyone who's provoking hatred on the streets. How do you know when someone is provoking hatred? Hatred is an emotion. It is a feeling. How do you know if that's what people on the streets are feeling? And how can someone control the emotion that other people feel from their words? It's a term that is purely designed to get an emotive response out of people to say sort of, oh, yeah, hatred, that's really, really bad. But what it really is a way of controlling words and speech that falls foul of the ideology of multiculturalism. That's what it's all about. Basically, what's happening in England is that a policy of unbridled immigration that's been taking place for nearly 30 years now is completely falling apart, and the government will try to blame anyone except itself. And so it's isolating citizens who are basically telling the truth about what has happened and said, that's hate speech, that's misinformation. And the thing is, the more the government... As long as the government doesn't take responsibility for its own failures, it will continue to clamp down and down on the speech of those who are pointing out the truth, and that's exactly what's going on.
So a bit of context around this, guys. A couple of weeks ago, there was a stabbing of 3 young girls that we covered on episode 10 of the Ark, and we saw a situation where there are a lot of white UK Welshmen and women that were obviously... This was the last straw, and that was it. They weren't happy. They weren't happy with the fact that their country, they don't feel like they have a voice. They've just had an election, and only not even 60% of the country participated in that. They feel like their country is slipping away from them. We can all feel that to an extent. They took to the streets because they felt that, look, we're running out of speech. Some idiots were violent. Some idiots tried to light, fires in migrant buildings. And now you never let a crisis go to waste. What's happened is Keir Starmer, the new Prime Minister, he's got a Labor massive majority, and he's clamped down hard on this. I mean, Ben, what were your thoughts on this when you saw this?
Well, this is a message to Starmer. If he just looks at my shirt there.
Thought criminal.
Come and try and arrest me, and he'll just find out about my favourite Australian pastime, famous Australian heroes like Ned Kelly, and he'll just find out about that, because what this is just a individual and a government that has become basically communist. They are trying to execute communist policies that are something the Soviet Union used to dream about, to create control of the citizens from a digital point of view, censoring people. Because what the internet does, and I touched on this last time I was on the show, is the internet has freed the minds of the people. The internet has allowed the individual to actually go and get real information, and people to share real information freely and openly. No one can stop that. No government. The whole way it was designed, DARPA created the internet. That's United States military research. They created the internet to be a system that is always up, it's always available. Anyone can join the net, and it's not centralised in any one location, any one node. So because it's not centralised in one location, it can never be taken out, it can never be censored, it can never be controlled. That's the whole idea of it. So then you have technically illiterate people in the government, like the UK government, thinking, we'll just censor the internet. We'll just censor, and the Labor government here are the same. We'll just censor the internet. That's the solution. You were never going to be able to. The whole way it was designed was to prevent censorship and to allow freedom of exchange of information.
Yeah, I don't think they like it's slipping through their hands. And one of the policies they came about, I made a video about them last week, was from the ages of 5. There's a policy in the UK government that put forward. From the age of 5, they want to teach kids in school what misinformation and disinformation is, and so that they can identify it like little Hitler Youth people. Like, you can't question net zero. I mean, Julian, you got kids. I mean, do you need help parenting them? Are you an idiot that doesn't need? You know what I mean?
In fact, I've had multiple conversations with my wife about whether or not we should be just considering homeschooling, and it's not affordable for most people to do that. But you could pool resources with other families that are like-minded and do it that way. So. From my point of view, you can't, to Ben's point, you can't censor the internet. And, probably they were getting away with it way too much before, fortunately Elon bought X, and now it's just terrorizing them. They can't control a narrative, because previously they could slap labels, they could scale content that they didn't like or agree with. And, we're starting to see these narratives burst wide open. It wouldn't matter if it's, Joe Biden and how fit and proper he is to run effectively the world, this is the same. They're sort of threatening to put people in jail and actually are arresting people over content. We saw the same thing happen over COVID, where pregnant mums were getting arrested over Facebook posts. It's just one step way too far.
Natalie.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, they have been arresting people, which has been quite traumatic, and giving them sentences of 18 months and 24 months for total trivialities of what they said on the internet. To Stephen's point, where do you emotionally draw the line on misinformation, disinformation and hate speech? I mean, it is a feeling. And I don't know if you guys saw Senator Rennick did a letter to E. Karen about the fact that Albanese, was it Albanese that was talking about the fact that Rennick is a cooker and a conspiracy theorist? So is that not hate speech? And what he got back was, no, that is not. So where is that delineation? Where do you stop hate speech? It's an emotion. So Stephen's 100% correct. You cannot quantify or qualify an emotion, because every individual is different and will have totally different emotions.
Yeah. The government cannot be the arbiter of truth.
No, neither can E. Karen.
We need the citizens of the country to actually be the ones who get to decide what is fact or fiction. So, the government certainly shouldn't be the arbiter of truth. In fact, Orwell's 1984, I believe that was set in the UK. So we're seeing some Orwellian
Yeah, there was a
nowadays play
meme. I don't know if you guys saw, there was a meme and there was a lady sitting in a train and she's reading 1984 and wearing a mask, and I thought that was really classic. It was one of the best memes I've seen.
You look at the movie V is for Vendetta. I mean, that's set in the UK in a dystopian future with a dystopian government. And if you actually look at what the government over there is trying to do right now, it's eerily similar to that movie. But they don't take into consideration what the ending of the movie is. And look at what is happening over there right now with the people. They've had a gutful of what's going on. They are rising up against this, and it's at the worst in Ireland. And we've seen the Irish, what's been going on over there. You have children now. The IRA are fully back active. That's what they're not telling the people. The IRA are active again in Ireland, but it's different to last time. This time they're linked up with the Protestants. They've linked up with the people they previously used to fight. And if you look at some, because I've studied a lot of stuff with counter-terrorism over my life, and I've studied a lot of stuff with the Troubles in Northern Ireland and all the things that happened there. What we are now seeing is classic IRA tactics. We're seeing children with hoods on. They went and ambushed a police squad car with Molotov cocktails. The car stopped, and then when the car stopped, a youth run up and Molotov the driver's side window. The police officer come out fully on fire. And we've seen it where they've had the police cars one after the other, the riot squad police cars that are armoured, they're designed to be involved in riots. And the children go up and Molotov the windshields of these cars because they know when it burns on the windshield, it's going to be very difficult to clean and it's going to take that vehicle off the road. That's incredible. That's intelligent tactics. These aren't just renegade little kids running amok. This is coordinated, and it is from a mastermind who's behind the scenes. And the videos that they're releasing on this, they take the sound out of them because they know that people can be identified by sound now, the sound of their voice. So this is the IRA back active. They're using children because they know they won't get arrested. They know that they will likely not get shot or the police won't be heavy-handed with them because they're children. So this is what's happened in Ireland. We're seeing signs pop up on poles that saying anybody who assists with bringing in the people to our communities, we will be watching you and we will target you. That's old school IRA.
And where is this all going, guys? I mean, with regards to this, we know they want to integrate digital ID, which we're going to talk about later, as a permit to actually get online and use the internet so that they can come after you legally, so that a certain profile, if you've got an alias, we know this is Joel Jammal, this is his address, and this is how you can get to him, and this is how you can sue him and serve him papers. Now, this particular man is going to serve 12 weeks in prison for replying filthy bastards on a post. Now, I don't think you should be jailed for 12 weeks for replying that. But this is the actual story. This is from Mario Nafal. I don't know how this guy posts this much, but he's a fire hose of content. 31-year-old Billy Thompson was sent to prison for 12 weeks after he replied filthy bastards on a post about police issuing a dispersal order to try and prevent protesters from becoming violent. It also included emojis of an ethnic minority person and a gun. His lawyer and Billy made the comment as part of a online Facebook conversation with a family member. The idea that this carries 12 months, I don't want to live in a country where that's the case. I just don't. I mean, the idea that my phone, because we know in Australia, and here's a wake-up call for you guys, because this is the Censorship Olympics between Australia and the UK. In Australia, the intelligence agencies and police can edit your social media. They can post on your behalf. There is legislation that we have that can do that. The idea that I could be thrown in prison for something that I didn't even write. What happened to the idea that there's, reasonable doubt?
Well, I mean, part of the problem is that we've got a bunch of technocrats who think it's possible to rid society of the emotion of hate, which itself is a utopian dream. But as long as they think they can do that, they will coerce and coerce and coerce until they do it, and they never will, and so the coercion will only get more powerful, and this is an example of that. The problem when you allow the government to determine misinformation and hate speech, I mean, there are many problems with it, but one of them is it's always ideologically inconsistent. So, for example, you've got people going to prison in the UK for saying things that are deemed hate speech, But when was the last time you heard about a Muslim imam going to prison for calling Jews descendants from monkeys and pigs, or for glorifying terrorists? You just don't hear it happen. But it's always directed to the right. The right is always guilty of misinformation. So Islamic extremism, fine, that's okay. We'll turn a blind eye. Oh, right-wing nationalism, criticism of immigration policy, hate speech, misinformation. Same in Australia. You had people getting away with teaching children to chant intifada, intifada, intifada on the Sydney University grounds. Now, everyone knows that intifada means violence. And the best way to show that is to ask them, what if I got a whole bunch of kids together and said, this is what the Muslims historically have done to the Christians. Isn't that terrible? It's genocide and everything. And then I start getting them to chant crusade, crusade, crusade. No one would be under any illusions that that was about violence. But it's always the left that gets a free hand at these things. And that's why it's dangerous to give the power to government to do this.
Where did these terms of far right come from? Because they never used to exist. I actually think you're saying the technocrats are trying to get rid of hate speech. I actually think they're trying to control the populace is what they're doing. I don't know how else to look at it, because, you know, I am from a communist country from the former USSR, and that's exactly what they used to do. You had no free speech. You said one thing against Stalin and you were in a gulag, and you were dead, or you were never heard from. So I don't know where this is heading. It's quite crazy. But where did this far right come from? We never had this before, other than fascism, sure. But, you know, if you have freedom of speech in your mind, all of a sudden you're a far right extremist.
Well, someone from the far right, if you look at when they say far right-wing extremist, if you look at people who are right-wing, they're just a normal person from 30 years ago.
Yeah, Julian's far right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Julian's so far right. Don't even get me started. Julian's a family man, business owner. He wants lower taxes,
That's
far
it.
right, immediately.
I got called a fascist when I was campaigning, and I had to look at the person and say, I'm Jewish. You're calling a Jewish person a fascist. Like, think about what you're saying.
Yeah. What Stephen Bartlett calls things like this semantic satiation, which is just like people getting so used to hearing the same term that it loses its meaning, right? And he's using it in different contexts, obviously, but that's really what it is. You can say misinformation so many times, it literally loses its meaning. And now you can call anything misinformation. Same thing with fascism. You know, you can, go and look at what real fascism is. And I can tell you, it's not somebody who just wants to be left alone and wants the government not involved in, you know, their day-to-day life and, you know, what they post on social media. Now, I'm not saying post and say specifically you want violence or whatever, but what I'm saying is, like, really, is this where we are now? 12 weeks or 12 months? What was it?
12 weeks.
12 weeks jail.
Jail.
For posting something on Twitter or wherever he posted it.
Yeah.
And Stephen, intifada, I actually beg to differ. A lot of people don't know what that means. I've spoken to students in universities. They have no idea. It's tragic that our education system is so inferior that these kids have no idea what they're chanting.
Don't know English, let alone Arabic.
Oh, well, no, they don't know any English either, as per the NAPLAN results, which we'll get to.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a bit. But no, you know, my favourite example of calling someone a Nazi is probably Winston Churchill. Literally was like the guy against them. But anyway, moving on closer to home, guys, and you can't accuse me of focusing on overseas stuff too much, but the director penalty notices have climbed to 26,000 as the Australian Taxation Office hunt down old debts. Now, Julian, can you please explain to people like myself that are perhaps new to this, what is this? What is this $4.4 billion the tax office is trying to recoup from old debts? Please tell me.
Yeah, so I'll provide some context. Like in our business, we're seeing a lot of small business owners come to us and they're looking for funding to get them out of tax debt. And so, this was, I would say, not very common not that long ago. And the reason for that is the ATO used to provide pretty flexible payment plans and help businesses, get on the right track and, even sometimes negotiate the tax debt down and things like that. Now they're enforcing at a degree we haven't pretty much ever seen. And, it's led to record insolvencies in businesses. And, the largest instigator of insolvency in this country is actually the ATO now. And right. and that's eye-opening. But essentially what happens is if a business runs up some tax debt, and we know in the last few years, businesses haven't had it easy. You know, I think 2019 there was the fires and lots of businesses suffered there. And they, it took a while to get back. 2020, we had, first round of COVID. 2021, we had the second round. And then since then we've had rising costs of living, inflation, cost of goods have gone up, supply chain issues, all these things. Businesses that have survived this last sort of 5 years haven't had it easy. And, so they need to pay their suppliers, they need to pay their employees and things like that. So usually the first thing that they will maybe let slide a little bit is their ATO payments. So that might be the BAS. They usually lodge that quarterly. Inside the BAS, you've also got the PAYG tax for their employees and things like that. So now what's happened is the ATO is saying we were flexible back then through COVID, all that kind of stuff. Now we want our money, and essentially they're issuing these director penalty notices for unpaid taxes, and it doesn't happen overnight. It's a process, and but they're using this sort of legislation not the way that it was intended. They're using it and essentially weaponizing it, I would say, to effectively, when the director penalty notice is issued, the directors are then personally liable for that tax debt. So that means that they can't escape it. They can't wind down the business and sort of let it go. That means the ATO is able to take their personal assets,
including their houses,
including
potentially
their home.
Cars.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
And so that's the scary part. If business owners haven't had it easy in the last 5 years, and then now they're being hit with this. And so there was 26,700 director penalty notices issued, which was a record. I think this sort of thing is unprecedented in our country, and they're really just being super tough. Sort of what businesses can do to sort of, if they are really struggling with that, they obviously can get funding. They can enter into payment arrangements with the ATO, but they do need to, speak to an expert. And there's a newer program called Small Business Restructure, and that's probably a good way that people can restructure their tax debt, enter into an arrangement with the ATO, and avoid having their personal assets be liable. Like, I'm not somebody who does a small business restructure. Usually they're sort of insolvency style firms or accounting practices and advisories, but we're sort of suggesting people look at that as a solution to prevent losing their house and the roof over their kids' heads.
Yeah. So sorry, I forgot to mention in the intro that you run Loans AI.
Yeah.
Is that the name?
Loan Options AI. Yeah.
Loan Options AI. And I mean, what are you seeing, like a large uptick in that with refinancing and people trying to get back on top of things? Or
yeah, absolutely. And so you have two sides, right? There's the consumer, the sort of mum and dad, PAYG employee, just works full time. Those people are doing debt consolidations because they've run up credit card debt over Christmas, or through the COVID period where things were a bit tougher for them, they kind of leaned on credit. Interest rates were cheap. Now rates are a lot higher. So people, the mortgage payments, in some cases double what they were paying before. Rents have gone up. Cost of living's gone up. So they're looking for ways to sort of get that budget relief. So we're doing a lot of debt consolidations there. But really, on the commercial small business owner side, the biggest problem we're seeing is cash flow, and in particular, consolidation of debt for ATO payments. So
I'm no expert on economics or anything, but it just seems like they got it the opposite, and anyone can weigh on this from here, you guys, but it just feels like when they did the COVID response and they were handing out all this money during 2020 and 21, I don't know why they were handing things out, and now they're coming down hard, the ATO is coming down hard on businesses and stifling growth, when really what probably shouldn't have happened is don't hand out money, just give them tax breaks. If you give them tax breaks, then people will you might actually find, like the US found on 5 or 6 occurrences, that their net tax collection increased when they did it. I think Kennedy, Reagan, number of US presidents, the Democrat and Republican, they've reduced tax rates, and they actually found they collected more taxes because people were less inclined to dodge, people were less inclined to deal in cash, people were happy to play the book. They didn't feel like they were being hard done by. But we've got it the opposite now, and now we're punishing businesses, punishing growth, punishing entrepreneurialism. I mean, I'm sure there's plenty of things you guys have wanted to do, and your new business ventures, and this has just been sort of hanging over your head. I mean, tell me.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The the strategy was totally wrong. And, you know, a lot of people would like to say, oh, you know, we didn't know what we didn't know. And, you know, but like a lot of people called this, you know, I did. You know, I did a presentation, you know, through the campaign, and I spoke about how rates were going to go to over, you know, 3.5%. And I laid out how that was going to be. And at the time, you know, Andrew Charlton and his team, they all laughed. You know, it was like, this was like
the economist, Andrew Charlton, who did the economics for who? Which Prime Minister?
They asked me what
Kevin Rudd.
Yeah.
Kevin Rudd.
Have you had a chance to actually speak to Andrew Charlton since regarding this particular topic? Because that would have been an interesting conversation.
No. I've tried to suppress those memories that I'm dealing with it the best way I know how, and just focus on what I can control.
Post-traumatic stress disorder, yeah.
Well, look, you know, they laughed and said, what economics degree do you have? And, you know, but a lot of people were calling it. You know, I wasn't the only one. It's not like, you know, there was people that were saying this is not the right way to do it. And tax breaks are great, but really just let businesses run their operation and get out of their way. You know, it comes down to just over policing. You know, you just can't tell people now that you know, the rates are going up because we're trying to control inflation, when a lot of that is outside of the average Joe's control. You know, the process of increasing rates, you know, to stop inflation, when a lot of it's driven by supply demand on property. You know, this is where, you know, they've made mistakes. They've, you know, put us in this position. They've let, you know, sort of record numbers of, you know, immigration, and the housing supply is just not there to support it.
Yeah, we're going to get into that in the council story as well. No, absolutely. Ben, you're busting to say something, I can see.
Oh, I was just going to say about what the ATO is trying to do now is they've moved into bringing in AI, and that's going to assess all tax returns, look for errors, look for people who owe money, and pursue it in almost a robo-debt style thing. I mean, that's some of the things I've heard that they're looking at bringing in to the ATO. Now, if you look at that, why do we continually push this thing of overtaxing the community, overtaxing Australians? I mean, why do we do it? Look at Dubai. Dubai doesn't charge income tax. Sure, they've got a large income from commodities and other means, but where does everyone go to do their business? They go to Dubai. Why do they go to Dubai? Because they have fair tax rates. Well, no income tax.
5% now, apparently.
Oh, 5%, unless they've changed it recently, yeah.
So they have no PAYG equivalent tax under, I think, 75K a year. And then it's 9%, 5% like GST VAT is what they're, so it's half of ours. And then it's 9% above the 75K, whatever it is, I believe. So it's
reasonable.
It's minimal, yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing Australians need to reappreciate is the importance of small businesses, and any measures that make it harder to start a small business or to keep a small business going is at the end of the day going to just fall into the hands of big corporations. And the fewer small businesses that we have, the more we basically have to rely on massive corporations for everything that we need, and the more we have to rely on the massive corporations for our employment. And I think one of the problems in Australia is that so many people nowadays are getting their income from a government job, many of them in the NDIS, is that we're just forgetting how important small businesses are to the economy, to employment, and actually just for having a free civil society that gives you a kind of range of options of where to shop, what you can buy, and where you can work. And my fear is that we're just heading into a situation where we're increasingly going to see small businesses die, and we are going to be solely reliant for the things that we need on a handful of mega corporations, which will form a cartel and basically be able to set prices, set all sorts of conditions that we have to abide by because there are no real alternatives. We remember COVID fell into the hands of the big corporations. They were the ones who are allowed to stay open. So when you went to a shopping centre, you saw that Woolworths, Kmart were allowed to stay open, but the small shops, they weren't allowed. Oh, why? Oh, because of 5-metre spacing and that kind of thing. The rubbish made up by Anthony Fauci that we wound up following. And corporations, big business, loves regulation. I know that sounds strange to us, but political scientists talk about this. They call it the regulatory state. Big business and corporations love regulation because they can afford the lawyers required to figure it all out and make sure that they comply. And they know that the small businesses do not have the funds to employ 20 lawyers full time to figure out exactly how to apply. And so regulation and red tape is what big corporations use. They lobby politicians, they lobby parties. It's what they use to shut down all competition. So anything that makes it hard for small businesses to flourish, we need to be very concerned about.
We've got
100%.
Yeah, 40%. Is it 40%? I think of job market is working for the government, so they're not really inspiring the small businesses at all. And where's the incentive for somebody to have a job and earn money if you're being attacked or start a business? You may as well just be unemployed, sit on unemployment benefits on a beach somewhere. You know, you've got to actually inspire people to work and create and. You know, a country that creates things and has that small entrepreneurs actually is so much more successful than all government-based.
Well, look at the Isle of Man. I mean, I think it was the Isle of Man that they brought in a flat tax rate. So if you were to bank your money there, you only pay a flat tax rate. So all these billionaires were going, well, hey, let's bank our money in the Isle of Man. I get more of my money, I pay less tax. And as a result, for doing nothing, the Isle of Man got a huge income. I mean, Australia could do a similar thing. We charge a small tax rate to foreigners who want to bank their money here. We tick them off as they made it here. Then what happens is you get that tax money for doing what? Moving money around and signing a piece of paper. I mean, it's a huge income they could bring in for the country, and it makes it attractive from in the financial sector, because then we become like a country that's, open to the world. And open to the world for financial services, but we have behind us good rates and good systems that are attractive to people all around the world. Why does Singapore do so well at financial sector? It's because they have good laws in relation to this. Australia gets held back. They get held back by terrible management, especially at government level. I mean, you've got the minister now for financial services, Stephen Jones from Labor, and he's done an atrocious job. He's ruining the industry. The financial advisors are spewing at how poorly he has managed the financial sector, and that's because you put someone in there who has no idea what they're doing and no idea how to innovate and bring business to Australia, but not importantly, free up the people in the financial sector to go out and be competitive, not just in Australia, but in the whole world.
Yeah.
How many Labor ministers actually do know what they're doing? And look at Bowen. What are we doing there?
Yeah, don't get me started. Guys, I've just got some breaking news. The New South Wales Liberal Party, Richard Shields, has refused to quit over the local election paperwork blunder. This has just come in now, Ben. Now, what's interesting about this story, a bit of context for you. Why on earth would he be considering resigning or quitting? Well, basically, yesterday, if you didn't know, was the cut-off date for submissions for candidates that want to run in the 14th of September local elections for New South Wales. And there has been a massive bungle from the Liberal Party in New South Wales. I'll cut straight to the chase on this, guys. This is partly, factional politics between the left and right in the party, but it's also partly to do with incompetence in the party with what we're seeing. And the real challenge with this is, it's left a lot of, areas without candidates from the Liberals, both left and right. I mean, Campbelltown's got no Libs at all. Penrith, a third of the wards, only, moderates went in, Conservatives didn't. Liverpool is not running an election for other reasons we'll talk about. Canterbury, Bankstown, Conservatives either not in or below the line, all left, this has completely messed the whole thing up. And to make matters worse, Lane Cove, which is a predominantly conservative, a bunch of Liberal members, people a bit like Senator Alex Antic and Rennick, they completely had the mayorship under them, and they kicked the mayor out. They basically didn't pre-select him. They got some staffer to jump in as the candidate, which we're going to listen to in a sec. 2GB Ben's Forum has been covering this very, very, very well. Ben's been right onto it. I don't know who's writing his material, but it's really excellent, and he's got his finger on the pulse. And what we're seeing in this particular area is the mayor may not even actually run. He may actually get someone else to run in... the mayor will not run under the Liberal Party. He might run as an independent. This is from Ben Fordham. and a bit of what the conversation sounded like.
DL05.
There you go, play them a free ad. There you go.
I think it's an understatement to say the New South Wales Liberal Party is in trouble. Dozens of Liberal candidates will not feature in local council elections, which are coming up next month. And it's all due to a catastrophic stuff-up at Liberal HQ. Executives missed the deadline to nominate candidates. And this is for some of the biggest council areas in New South Wales. Richard Shields, the state director, has apologised. He's blaming limited resources. But as we revealed earlier, the New South Wales Liberal leader in New South Wales, Mark Speakman, has told him to resign, and he's spoken to Peter Dutton about it as well. So I would suspect that Richard Shields has only got hours left in this job. I'd say he'll pull the pin today. He'll have to. We have contacted him and offered him the chance to tell his side of the story on air this morning. And because of this stuff-up, it means that councils like the Northern Beaches and Camden and Lane Cove will be without a Liberal candidate. But that's not the only drama engulfing the Liberals in Lane Cove. Scott Bennison has been the mayor for 2 terms. He's been a councillor for almost 2 decades. And he feels betrayed because before yesterday's nomination stuff-up, Scott Bennison, a Liberal, was kicked off the Liberal Party ticket. Instead, the Libs have endorsed a 22-year-old who works for the local member. Locals don't understand how a highly qualified councillor and mayor could be knocked off by a 22-year-old political staffer. So Scott Bennison has decided to take action, and he joins us in the studio right now, the Mayor of Lane Cove, Scott Bennison. Good morning to you, Scott.
Good morning, Ben, and good morning to your listeners.
Yeah, thank you very much for coming in. You've got some news to share with everyone straight away.
Yes. I'd just like to publicly announce that I quit the party, and I'm just sick of all the rubbish that happens, the factional rubbish that happens within the party.
You're no longer a Liberal?
I'm no longer a Liberal.
How long have you been in the party?
Since 2007.
How long have you been supporting the party? Probably even longer than that.
Probably just prior to that, but when I became a councillor in 2007, I became a member in 2007. I was first elected to Lane Cove Council as an endorsed Liberal from 2008 and have been that since up until about 2 days ago.
Sometimes when we hear from people that, I'm going to quit the party, I'm going to quit the Libs, I'm going to quit the Nats, I'm going to quit the Labor Party or the Greens, people don't follow through with it. You've already done it, right?
I've already done it 2 days ago.
So what's the process involved in quitting?
Send an email to head office and just say I want to resign from my membership as the party. That's it. What's
your reason for doing so?
Well, my main reason is that, as you pointed out, I was, I suppose, rolled at the pre-selection and after all this time on council and supporting my residents, I was replaced by a staffer and the reason I did this too was because the community, knowing that, came to me and said, "We want you to run as an independent." So I had to think about it, and so I decided to resign from the party and take the next steps.
The 22-year-old staffer who's been picked, he works for Anthony Roberts, a qualified young man, I'm guessing, or
not sure. I mean, I still think he's at uni, but I think that's pretty much been his only career or job or life experience.
Working for Anthony Roberts?
Yes.
And so who would have been responsible for rolling you?
I would say the local party factions.
Okay. Would Anthony Roberts have been involved?
I thought he would. I would think that he would have known about it, yes.
The Liberal Party President Don Harwin in New South Wales?
Not too sure about him. He's probably on the wrong faction.
Okay. Richard Shields?
Probably not him.
Okay. But they made the decision to get rid of someone who has been the mayor, a Liberal mayor, and replace you with a 22-year-old.
That's correct.
So you're now the independent mayor of Lane Cove.
That's correct. I'm here. I'm announcing I'm now an independent mayor of Lane Cove. I resigned from the party 2 days ago. I had to do it to put my nomination in for my group, and our group, which is actually a group of accountants, has been endorsed by the AEC.
Anyway, guys, this goes on, and Ben's done a really phenomenal job. Now, with this particular topic, one of the really heartbreaking things about all of this, and one of the strategies around all of this, is this has completely left the Conservatives in New South Wales in complete disarray. Complete disarray. Let me give an example. So that I don't get sued. In America, the way George Soros has taken over the DAs, the reason why there's crime on the rampant around America, the reason why they keep winning state and federal, it's because they actually secure local. So many freedom parties that you see running in this particular election, because I've been talking to them and about how you've got to bleed your candidates and get them experienced in local elections. That's why this is so critical. Now, if you've got, let's use Malcolm Turnbull, for example, who's not involved in this at all, and if you take Tony Abbott, who's not involved in this at all, left and right of the Liberal Party, often what happens in these particular elections is you'll get the left-wingers, they will actually mobilise together, they will sabotage the party so that they can actually cull the party of the right-wingers. In this particular case, what has happened is the left-wing people within the Liberal Party, they lost pre-selections in these areas. The Conservative candidates actually won them. And when it came to submitting the papers in yesterday, in order to actually get things done, get them on the ballot, because the ballot draw's happening on Monday, in order to do that, they actually didn't do that. The HQ of New South Wales hasn't done that. And this spells disaster from the Libs, because it means we don't have local candidates that get experience and then do state. We don't have state candidates that can then do federal. And the real crazy thing about this, and what you mentioned before, Julian, a housing crisis, why do you want to control local? And I'll say it. There are people that lobby for renewables, people like Michael Photius, that will directly, benefit from this from the companies that they work with. And the problem with that is a lot of the councils, they control how greenhouses have to be. They control whether there's going to be solar panels, whether there's going to be, extra this, extra that. all those reports that you get when you put in a development application. This is what I'm talking about. And this is not helping the housing crisis at all. And they want to put more EV chargers for electric vehicles around the place and get approvals for that. And this business model that we're seeing right here, the money is very much being flowed into the Liberal Party to control it. Now, look, the Liberal Party will suffer as a result of this, but the Liberal left and moderate faction in the middle that don't share my values, they will benefit in the long term. They're playing the long game. And so the problem with all of this is this shows the Labor Party that the Liberal Party is weak in New South Wales. This signals a potential early election. I was leaning towards an election next year, but this is another grain of sand basically saying maybe we should go early. In order to win government, we can see the Liberal Party are weak in New South Wales. New South Wales has 44 electorates. They might go early because they're in disarray. I mean, the party's not talking to each other. The state guy that's the guy responsible for all of this, according to Ben Fordham, Richard Shields, he's not resigning, as I just read out from 50 minutes ago. I mean, who wants to comment on this? This is an insane story, and I'm not surprised.
Well, I'll just say that it's devastating. It's devastating for people who put in their application to run and they wanted to run for the council, and it's so disappointing to see, because if we look at the Wollongong Council now, Wollongong City Council, that's just been handed to the Labor Party and Greens pretty much on a platter. If we look at the mayor candidates now, we have 3 independents, a Greens candidate and a Labor candidate. That's it. We look at a lot of the wards. I think 2 of the wards have some independents running, but the rest of the wards just have Labor and Greens. Now, this is a Labor and Greens, as I said on the previous show, wanted to make the collection of red bins fortnightly. Right. So now that's looking like it's definitely going to be a possibility. We had the candidate, good councillor down there, John Doherty, and he opposed it. He said, no, what a ridiculous idea. Why would you change something like that? So this is the kind of implications that this brings in, and it's not good because we don't want to have uncontested elections. I mean, that doesn't help anybody. So,
it's not the way democracy is meant to work, right?
No, exactly right, yeah. So incredibly disappointing to see, because there are a lot of good people in the Liberal Party who are putting in tremendous effort to serving their communities, and there was a lot of fantastic councillors who served their communities very well and were great in the community. So it's just a disaster, and it's very disappointing to see. Yeah.
And how do you blame a lack of resources? I'm actually very confused about that, because when you look at the Northern Beaches, Georgia Ryburn, she was the deputy mayor of Northern Beaches, and there was 5 Liberals in that particular area. They put in their paperwork. She actually stated that she put in her paperwork, rang, and they said, yes, the paperwork is in. So if the paperwork is in, how hard is it if...
Let me tell you. So that when they say the paperwork's in, it means the Liberal Party HQ have it, but the AEC doesn't have it. The 2 people that were tasked with this, it's very clear. It was Richard Shields, who we're talking about not quitting, and Peter Wheatley, who's not actually a factional person, he's a very neutral person. But that's what they mean. They only had 2 people doing it.
Oh, I'm totally, that's great. But if you've got to me, in any business and any efficient, whatever job you do, if you're an efficient organisation, if you do not have the staff and if you don't have somebody doing it, offload it to someone else. Like, how about giving it to the people who actually put the paperwork in to do it themselves? Would that not have been the most logical thing to do? I'm sure they would have.
Seems like an incredibly suspicious oversight is what I'll say.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, what is the point of a political party? It's to state their claim to nominate, to run a campaign. This is like a pretty important part, right?
Minor technicality. You're supposed to have candidates.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in these particular areas, you have no Conservatives to vote for. So I think the residents would be most upset, would they not?
People are going to kill me because they know we're doing how to vote cards, for the Turning Point Australia ones. And it's literally going to be like Labor and Greens.
Do a donkey vote.
And then I'm going to have all this negative press. They're going to be like, Joel's backing the Labor Party or Joel's backing the Greens. And it's like, well, you know what? If you're upset with me, why didn't you put your name down? All right? Don't get annoyed at me. I'm just literally working out the worst of 2 evils. Andrew Charlton in Parramatta, I was actually surprised the other day to find out he backs nuclear. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Funny.
It's good. I mean, it's the right one. I mean, you can only be on the losing side for so long, right?
Literally.
Yeah,
literally.
How could you not resign? I mean, let's say that this is sheer incompetence. How could you face people after something like that and just not...
Arrogance.
Or man up and just say, I'm going to fall on my sword, I'm going to resign. Like, is this sort of an age of just mediocrity and shamelessness where people just think, no, I deserve a second go? Or does everyone have an excuse for being utterly incompetent?
Yes.
Political parties for...
Yeah, they do, because we are giving medals for last place in running races. So, I mean, keep going.
Honestly, Samurai's death, I just think, and just go for it.
He should go, I'm sorry.
Well, even look at the parties that were organised and got their tickets in. I mean, we look at some of the candidates, as I said, for Wollongong Council, and it's like... But this is an organised party, got all their candidates in, and we've still got a bunch of duds. I mean, this is the best you could produce out of everyone you've got down there, and it's an area that you hold. And still, if you look at the candidates, if you look at all the Labor candidates and in the Greens candidates, you wouldn't vote for any of them. Even if you just take the political party side away and go, is this person an all right person?
Yep.
And you'd sort of go, well, actually, no. So this is the disappointing thing, how poor politics has gotten in general, where we don't see good people going for politics anymore. I mean, you used to have pre-selections where 20 candidates would go for a pre-selection. You'd have ex-Supreme Court judges in there. You'd have people who've done 20 years service in lots of other different areas. Now, you see even safe seats for both political parties, and you'd have sometimes 4 candidates, maybe 2 candidates. I mean, you look at some of the safe seats in the Labor Party, for example, like down in Wollongong, Cunningham, they had 2 candidates, one got told to pull out, so it was a one-horse race. How can you have that in a seat where it's a big seat that's for the party and it's a guaranteed seat in Parliament? You think you'd have 20, 30 people going for it. And this is what we've seen over many years now, is a decline in politics, people becoming less and less interested in it, which is an alarming thing, because what it really links back to is people are losing faith in the system. People are losing faith in our government, but they're losing faith in the whole of our system, which is a dramatic and very frightening thing, because if you see what that then pushes towards, it pushes towards foreign entities coming in and capitalising on that for their own gains and to take over.
That's right.
Just having a class of professional politicians. I mean, we've got this, it's a phenomenon that's been in Australia, it's been building for over 20 years. People whose only job was ever working in the party. They've never run a business. They've never made a contribution to a profession. They start working in the party, maybe at university or just out of university, and they just become a party apparatchik. And one of the problems, and this is both for Labor and Liberal, is that the factional hatreds are so fierce now that every faction wants to make sure that whoever it gets in is going to be 100% loyal to that faction. And you can never guarantee that with an outsider. You can never guarantee that with someone who may have, say, spent 20 years working in the railways and wants to make a contribution. You can't. And so what do? They go for people who they can trust. That is party flunkies. Exactly. Yeah. People they can trust, people they know. And you wind up with a whole bunch of people representing Australians with just no good life experience, and that's exactly where we're at.
We saw Elon say that he would be part of a government efficiency, board or whatever to help.
We need him here. We have more wastage in Australia, bureaucracy than anywhere else, I think.
I agree, and that's why we have higher tax rates and all the rest of it. But I think if you just gave the country to a founder, a startup founder, an entrepreneur that had bootstrapped multiple businesses before, you watch how efficient this place would run. There would be not a dollar spent where it wasn't meant to be. There would not be a dollar wasted.
But they hate those people. Look at Trump. Like, he's a businessman. He knows how to run a business. This is why he's hated, because he doesn't have wastage. We have so much wastage, it's ridiculous.
Well, it's also about he's been in the real world. I mean, this is the thing we see so much disappointingly in politics, is we have people come in there who their only consideration is getting a job for their friend. They don't care about if that person is even suitable for the job, if they've made mistakes in the past or had a terrible, terrible performance at local or state, and then they want to go for federal, for example. I mean, you saw Linda Burney come into federal parliament, and how long was she in the state parliament? And she was terrible there. Why would you promote her then to a promotion? It makes no sense, but you really have to ask yourself the question, why is this occurring? Why do we not have the good people going for it? And it is on all spectrums of politics. I mean, one thing I heard John Howard say at a private event once was, he said, back in his day when he was in politics, you had people come to the Labor Party, for example, who were ex-union, but they were previously worked in that industry for 20 years. They'd had their hands on the tools. They knew that they'd done stuff in their life. And now what you have is exactly what is the political staff is. You have people who have never had a real job, and then they expect to just waltz into Parliament and then make decisions for millions of people. It simply is a system that doesn't work, which then begs the question, does a set of criteria need to be created for political candidates? Is there something that needs to come in where you have a set of standards you must meet? Like, for example, I look at the upper house, let's say the federal upper house, so the Senate. It's meant to be the house of review. So that's meant to be the wise, experienced politicians that make sure the legislation has all its ducks in a row. That hasn't been the case for a long time. So why wouldn't you put something on the Senate, a certain age restriction, or that person who's done a lot in their life, maybe they're a little bit younger, but they've got a tremendous amount of experience. Those are the kinds of people you want in the Senate to review legislation, not someone who's young and not someone who's never done anything in their life.
Whose chief virtue is loyalty.
Yeah, you need prerequisites. You actually need a prerequisite to have some sort of a business or have achieved something in your life. And in the Senate, to your point, not only are they not deciding things, some of the times they don't even turn up. You know, you look around the Senate when you're watching it and half the seats are empty. Where are all these senators? Aren't they supposed to be there consistently?
I truly think that, it's a dangerous argument when we start putting rules around who can access democracy.
Agreed.
It's really dangerous. What we need is actually more direct democracy. We really do. So that means more citizen-initiated referendums, like what we had with The Voice. Wasn't that the best way to slap down what the government did? Now, did we get the full mileage out of it? No, because our right-wing side is all over the place. But the idea that the public could say no, 60% said no, and that's it. That is a really powerful thing we could do. We actually need more democracy. If we start adding requirements out of it, we're going to get some selective applications of that, as we've seen with this. Candidates not having their papers handed in, whereas a lot of the left-wingers are getting their candidate papers handed in. And I'm going to have a full analysis of that next week. But I'm really, really worried about this, because what we're seeing is this is going to have an even worse impact. It's the perfect storm on housing, because now it's going to tie into the green agenda, more requirements for people, larger loans, more fat and bureaucrats that don't actually go to building quality homes. So rather than focusing on a smaller set of trades when building a house, you've also got to consider another 5, 10 trades because the council's got all these requirements for DAs. I mean, it's slow enough with DAs. If you want a, small extension on the back of your house or just to throw a pool in or a fence, it's a disaster. You're waiting years and, council are the absolute worst. The amalgamations were the worst thing ever and nothing's getting done.
Well, in reality, if you look at it, really, why do we have councils in the first place? It should be handled by the state government. And then if you look at what they have these council elections, it's a huge, huge drain on all the resources for political parties. You just have to ask the question, should we even have councils? Should it go back to being on the state politicians to actually manage their electorates? Obviously, you'd have New South Wales government component that would be do the duties of what the council currently do. But what have councils evolved into? They used to be about roads, rubbish.
Roads, rates, rubbish.
Yeah, roads, rate, rubbish. And now what it's become into ideology. They're pushing ideology, what books can be at school.
Yeah, we have very proud to tell everybody here that we have the no more racism signs in our...
Oh, so does Double Bay. And I've got to say, my taxes have gone to pay for that sign because I need to be reminded to not be racist.
I live in Granville and, 80-90% are ethnics.
That's ridiculous.
It's just insane.
So did it help you or you right-wing fascist, Julian?
Maybe it's something for children to read, because of the NAPLAN, they don't know how to read.
Racism not welcome.
The problem is when you look at a lot of these councils when they are doing stuff like that, you look at the focus that they put their effort into. It's not how can I bring business to the area? How can I improve the lives of the people, build leisure centres, build tracks, running tracks, build sporting grounds and upgrade them and get kids into sport because it's good for the community. They don't do any of that. They're focused on ideology that's related to Marxism. And if you look at where has that come from, it's because some of these councils coming in come through the education system where they've been brainwashed and indoctrinated by Marxism, and then they take that ideology to then push on local government that's not even designed as an apparatus to push that kind of agenda in the first place. But that's what we're seeing, and we're seeing them go completely off topic. Like the Sutherland Shire Mayor, he had a debate with Labor and Greens councillors about whether they were going to put up the rainbow flag for Pride Month. And he said to them, which flag are you going to take down? Because we've got 3 flags there already. Which flag are you going to take down to put up this flag? Are you going to take down the Australian flag, the Aboriginal flag, or the state flag? Which one are you going to do? Because I'm not putting up a new flag. I want to put a new flagpole. I want to do all these crazy things. They debated it, talked about all these different things. And then you have to ask yourself the question, hang on a minute, why is this even important?
Actually, roads, rates, rubbish. Roads,
rate, rubbish.
This is complete virtue signalling. It's absolutely distressing. You've got Waverley Council with a rainbow on their driveway, and my taxes paid for that too. Like I said previously, where's the heterosexual colour if you don't identify with the rainbow? But it's just crazy. They should be taking out the rubbish. You're right.
And there's an opportunity cost because every time you're not talking about that, when you should be doing competent stuff that you're being paid for.
That's right. You've got traffic jams everywhere. You've got no infrastructure being built anywhere because you can't get out of certain areas because it's just a nightmare. But we're talking about which flags we want to put up.
And look at the development stuff. If you look at some of the people who get involved in council, they get involved in council specifically because they want to be able to work with developers and get things passed sooner and change the whole rules of a council and all the laws and everything related to a council in order to get through their development applications to put up high-rises and do whatever they want to do, all for their own selfish profit, nothing to do with helping the community. And it's completely wrong.
It's a lot of favour trading for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. This is the upshot of a trend that's been taking place over the last 40 years. The decline of social capital, the decline of civic participation. 40 years ago, the numbers of people who were members of political parties was much, much higher. The numbers of people who were members of trade unions and other sort of voluntary societies, much higher. The numbers of people involved in groups like the Boy Scouts, the Girl Guides, the Boys Brigade, the Girls Brigade, much, much higher. But what's happened over the last 40 years, life has become very busy. Home technology has become much better. We've basically become more inward-looking, less outward-looking. And so there's been a vacuum of just ordinary people being more civically conscious, and filling that vacuum are the only kinds of people who have a strong bent to go into that, and that is ideological fanatics. And so that's part of what has happened. And so what we actually need, and no one's got any answers in terms of how to generate it, and it just might have to wait for things to get so bad that there's a huge motive for people to do this again. We actually need a revival of just civic spirit, civic activism, where people are out there doing things in their community in order to make sure that the community is running in a way that's sort of conducive to the character of the community, and people are getting the things that they need, and it's not being taken over by a group of fanatics with delusions of grandeur that they're going to solve the problem over in the Middle East with a local council virtue signal on Palestine.
These fanatics are also entrenched in the council, and you can't get rid of them. I mean, look at City of Sydney. You just, Clover Moore has been there for how long? And it's all about the green agenda and the LGBTQI agenda. What about, other things like 30 kilometres an hour that I think the City of Sydney wants to introduce into the area? Who's going to want to drive?
Or the nightlife.
The nightlife is down the drain. It's dead. There's all these business owners are not getting any money. The people are not out. It's crazy.
You know why I love Nigel Farage? Because he comes up with brilliant ways of, coming up with litmus tests to test the left. So he said, how about we stop demonising coal and actually talk about positive policies to improve the environment? You always see them doing these climate lockdowns, and not climate lockdowns, you always see them shutting down roads in the middle of cities and painting themselves in red, and, what do they call? I forgot the name of the protests. But
Extinction Rebellion.
Extinction Rebellion, just negative. Now, these councils, okay, they're trying to push all this stuff with regards to approvals on houses and making them more green and friendly and EV chargers everywhere. When was the last time you saw a council organise a rubbish pickup day? When was the last time you saw a council organise a tree planting day? This is positive stuff that the old greenies used to do. They used to go down to the beach and they'd sweep it and they'd do something positive that would actually make a tangible difference. And this tells you everything you need to know about these people, everything.
And I think, point to note with all the council collections, some councils, one of the reasons why they've stopped it, so I've been told, is because of regulations that have been put on them, WHS-related stuff, because they're leaving all this stuff out on the side of the roads and someone might get hurt. Might cut themselves on something that is in the rubble or in the pile of things. And I go, well, hang on a minute. It goes back to exactly what we've been talking about. And it's the fact that they are putting in these ideologies and these bureaucracies that are holding back Australia and not moving it forward.
Yeah, well, I'll say this is my view. Some of you may not agree with it, but I feel like we need to let natural selection play out there.
No, I do agree. I had a lovely little argument with somebody on Facebook regarding the 30 kilometre per hour speed limit. And I actually said that slower speed limits can cause more deaths. And there's studies in this as well. And he said, but they're not for pedestrians. You can get killed in the city with pedestrians. I said, how many pedestrians do you know get killed in the city? Like, please name. And it actually was a lowering of pedestrian deaths. He said, that was during COVID. And I said, prior to COVID, it was even lower. So
yeah,
I don't even know where these people get these ideas from.
You reminded me of something. There was a local council development in my area, and they wanted to show that the development being done there by a large property developer wouldn't affect the area. So they did it. They commissioned a traffic report. When? During COVID, during lockdowns, and they didn't. I don't believe they provided an updated one. So the council, the state government, they decided they approved it on that basis. And this is the sort of stuff people are just sick of. They're just sick of it. And but look, we've got to move on from this. The good news on this particular topic, and maybe a lesson for the Victorian people that want someone better to vote for than the Labor and Greens. The Liberal Democrat Party are running in dozens of wards in New South Wales. They've actually listened to what I said. I remember having this debate on the phone. I'm sure John Rydick won't mind me saying this.
Libertarians, just in case.
Sorry, the Liberal that's right. The Libertarians, formerly known as the Liberal Democrat Party, they're basically they're right on the same page as me, guys, with politics. So the Libertarian Party, I had this debate in 2021 with John Rydick on the phone. I said, John, we got local elections in December 2021. You've got to run candidates because all politics is local. If you win local, then you can win state. If you win state, you can win federal. And he's like, Joel, I'm running for the Senate. It's not a big deal. We don't have the capacity. I'm glad to say, obviously, now that John's elected in the state parliament, thanks to people like Natalie Doomer and others, they're running in the local elections, which is really good. I'm glad they've come around to the George Soros way of taking power in a country. This is actually what you need to do. All politics is local. If you can mobilise people locally, that means you have volunteers. You have good candidates with experience on how councils are run, how votes are run, how people politics works. And so this gives people in New South Wales a tangible choice in those areas where the Liberal Party have failed. I think it's astonishing that the Libertarian Party have actually done a better job getting their forms in than the Liberal Party. I think it's hilarious because the Liberal Party have tens of millions of dollars. And Victoria's elections are coming up. So with New South Wales, the dates are early voting, mail-out ballots come out in the first week of September. Early voting stations open on the 8th of September, and the actual voting day is the 14th of September. So we're within 24 days away, guys, from this thing. Now, Victoria's local elections are on the 26th of October, and early voting is in early October. If you guys want to run in that, you need to start connecting with your local freedom parties, with your local groups. Don't run in the same areas where there's already a good person running. Have a talk around and work together. And I truly believe local is one of the easiest places to actually get elected, despite the corruption, which we can talk about another time. But guys, we do have to move on to the next few stories because some of them to your expertise. The government is developing a new digital ID system as per Bill Shorten, but it must gain the public's trust. This is what Toby Murray has written in his particular article. He mentions Trust Exchange, which was announced by Bill Shorten earlier this week, is what the federal government is developing as a new digital ID and credential system, which would incorporate existing data the federal government has into the system so that they can identify people. Ben, can you please help us meander through this and exactly where this direction is going with the government and what they want to achieve by this?
Well, they've put someone in charge of what's the call? Getting the public's trust. Somebody who made a disaster of the NDIS. I just can't believe it.
Sorry, I just can't stop laughing. That was
it is a comedy at this point. You don't know whether to think it's a comedy or a tragedy. But from a technical point of view, just looking at it on the surface, I've only briefly gone over it, and obviously I haven't seen the actual app or what they're actually trying to do, like on a technical level. But from what I've heard about it so far, is he talks about a token-based system. Now, I have spoken to MPs before about this particular system they were looking at bringing in, which they believe removes any of the problems associated with the exchange of a digital ID, the threat to privacy and all this sort of things that they think that this token-based system is going to solve. And I'm like, you idiots, you're technically illiterate because a token is a hacker's dream. That's like, great, I don't need to even look for anything. I just steal the token. I mean, if you have, everyone's done this, right? If you go home tonight and you open your web browser, look at your emails, okay? Unplug your internet. Wow, my emails don't work anymore. Plug your internet back in. Hey, my emails work. I didn't have to sign back in. That's because of the token that's associated with it. In layman's terms, that's what it is. It's a token that's associated with that login. Now, what a hacker will do, steal the token, load it in their browser, they can access it. You know, there are certain factors built into the security where it can become harder if it's linked to checking the IP address and all that sort of stuff if it's been transferred. But ultimately, tokens can be stolen. So I'm just going, out of everything you could have chosen, this is probably one of the worst systems you could have chose. You know, and it's not going to, and they talk, oh, it's encrypted. They talk about all this nonsense. And I go, mate, they've hacked into the Pentagon. I mean, you're talking about things that aren't going to work when you look at payment systems. As I've said before, credit card payment systems. You go and enter your credit card details to buy something online. How come your credit card's not getting swiped and stolen when you buy it? Because it opens up, sends the details down, verifies, and boom, it's done. That's what they need to do with the digital deed, not with a token, because a token is easier to steal and replicate. You don't have to confirm details. You don't have to worry if it's you've got the correct ID, for example. All you need to do is get the token. So
there's a few things to unpack, but yeah, you're right. I think when it comes to security, especially cybersecurity, you really want to make sure that you have the least amount of concentration. You know, creating a digital ID register where you're like literally opening it up to hackers saying, look, I've put it all in one place for you.
Centralization,
It's like,
right? It's a treasure trove of data.
How has that been going? Like Optus and all the rest of it. How's it been going for all these different other companies? It hasn't. And now we want to have all our details, everything in the one system.
Yeah, it's scary. But look, I'm very familiar with sort of ID verification, biometrics, all this kind of stuff, because, you know, in my line of work, every lender these days, you know, to avoid, you know, in the old days, you used to have to go and get your ID verified by a justice of peace and things like that. And, you know, just because we were doing it so often, I went and became a JP, and, you know, clients who I need to verify the ID, I do the stamp and all that kind of stuff. You know, technology is moving forward. You know, we used to have banking, and, you know, I think if you talk to a lot of people, they would have said that I'd never trust an online banking system. I'd never transfer money through the internet. But, you know, technology is moving forward. So my view is it shouldn't be done by the government. I think if we're going to have a digital ID system, you can't trust the government to do that. They are the worst at executing anything. And, you know, they'll spend, I think they said it was going to cost 12 million. I promise you, record this, clip it. There is zero chance they get it done for $12 million or whatever the original number that was promised. It's going to end up costing maybe 5 times that, because they just don't know how to manage that. But just going back to it, you know, you have a trust-based system. I think security should be multi-factor. You know, you're seeing a lot of efficacy on two-step authenticators, you know, things like, you know, SMS codes. You know, now cybersecurity experts and even hackers, they'll tell you that those things can be exploited, because you can do a port on someone's mobile number. If you know the right information about somebody, you can port their mobile number without their permission, because, you know, Optus or whoever it is might have these secret questions about you, and if they know the certain information, they can port the number from them to you and get the SMS code and then get into your banking. Happened to my father-in-law. You know, so quick tip is, like, if you are with, you know, a telco company, call them, make sure you've got a port lock set up. But then multi-factor authentication can be great. Think centralizing a digital ID system, as much as they'll talk about it trying to be, you know, let's move with the times, it's really a mechanism of control for them. And that's the problem I think most people have. They'll say that it's going to be a system that makes everything easy for everybody, give you access to multiple services, and it's totally voluntary. But we already know with, like, direct...
For how long?
But the thing is, when they say voluntary, it's not really, you know, if you want to access government grants, if you want to access anything to do with, you know, the government, you know, if you want to get certain rebates and things like that, you need to subscribe. And it's like, well, this is going to be, I really don't have a choice, because it's either my business gets this grant that, you know, makes my business viable and helps me invest in research and development, etc., or I have to comply with this. And so it's not much of a choice. It's not voluntary. And that's the problem, people. You can't have trust when somebody's giving you effectively coercion. You know, that the trust comes from giving it as an option and letting it speak for itself.
That's exactly right. And you're going to have problems with the elderly who have no idea about how to create a digital ID. I mean, that's a real issue as well. There's quite a significant amount of older people.
Mm. And not to mention old people that are technically illiterate. When there's people who have a lot of trouble with technology for whatever reason, not everyone's going to be good at it. It's just a way of life. It's not. I know from a very deep technical level about IT, computers, devices, and it is a difficult area. It's not something that's easy, and the problem is it keeps getting more complicated because of the fact it's expanded so fast. They need to bring more people in. These people aren't like the old school people who created all of the early tech. These people make it more complicated than it needs to be, especially in the coding side, because they think, I need to make it look good. You know, I need to make it look like I'm doing my job. And that's the problem. It's dragged out and become more complicated than it needs to be. So you have that problem too. People who are going to struggle with the basic stuff. And that opens a door too. That opens a door to them becoming victims of cybercrime because they don't understand the technical nature. Like, for example, people make their password on their Wi-Fi really easy, or like they use the standard password. They don't go and actually put a new password on it. And there's actually been password lists that were released a long time ago now, but there was one called Netgear Poon or something like that. And basically, Netgear, when they released their routers, would have a set code of how their passwords were. All the passwords were different for every router, but it was, 3 digits of letters, a colour or something like that, like a word, like green or red or something, and then it was a set of numbers, a certain character set, like 4 numbers or something like that. So someone figured that out, got the lists from Netgear of every combination of their password, made it into a password list. So you could sit there and crack a Netgear password if they've used the default password. So this is the technical things that people in the community aren't aware of. So if you've got that happening in the community, what's going to happen when you get hackers and they're going to, use this to their advantage to steal someone's digital ID, use it to steal their entire life, not just their entire life, they're going to use it to open bank accounts galore because they don't need anything except this trust system that they've got. And then you're going to see huge implications happen. Like we're going to see
money laundering,
you're going to
terrorism financing, all of it. And that's why a lot of the lenders use these biometric systems now and liveness checks. Because I was to my story before about you used to have to get it certified by a JP. Now they send a link to the client, and I've done these before. And they do the liveness check on your face. They make you move side to side and up and down. But I've already seen people using generative AI be able to beat these liveness checks.
Ben mentioned that last time.
Yeah, I've actually passed it. I was able to bypass it, all facial recognition. I've had people show that to me, that system. See, it makes me look like I'm a real person. I go, it ain't hard to do that on the screen. It's not hard. Up and down, they can do all sorts of things. Like they have heads now through AI. You take a photo of someone, you put it up, it makes a moving head. You can tell it what to do. Up and down, left and right, it'll do it.
It was the number one trending on GitHub is an open sourced AI face, what do you call it? Where they superimpose, they took one of Elon and they took his face and put it on a random guy. It was a webcam and he was just like moving around. He looked like Elon Musk.
Yeah.
That's when you actually can't understand whether you're listening to somebody who's genuine or not. I mean, we're heading into some interesting times. We really are. There's going to come a time when we really won't know whether our news feeds are genuine, the people we're talking to over an internet Zoom call is a genuine person.
Look at the biometrics. If you look at all these biometrics we're seeing today, like fingerprint, facial recognition, iris scan, all these sorts of things, and voice recognition. All that was being used in the top facilities around the world in like the 90s. That was all those type of biometrics are being used then. But then the question comes, so this is like 30, 40-year-old technology. What are those people using now? They ain't really using a lot of that. They're using far more sophisticated things that they see your mannerisms, they see your gait of your walk, all these very advanced biometric mechanisms in your body. And they have computer systems that focus on that now because they know fingerprints can be forged. They know facial recognition can be forged, iris scans. They know all these things can be forged now. And it's becoming easier because it's more available to everyone. It's now become easier to actually forge all of that stuff.
Ben, I've got a question from an audience member. They're wondering what the impact of quantum computing might actually have on digital ID, especially the nation that reaches quantum computing supremacy on all of this stuff. Does that, to what extent will that impact cracking these things quickly?
Well, if you look at if you look at the encryption algorithms, back in, I think it was the 70s, they created DES encryption. That was one of the first encryption algorithms. The NSA had a big part in that. And at the time, they were charged with creating a certain section of the algorithm. I believe it was the boxes. And at the time, all the nerds were saying, they're going to write backdoors into the algorithm. It's going to happen. Modern computers today, they can look at it in depth into the algorithm, and they see that the NSA actually hardened the boxes and made it more difficult to crack. So the replacement for that was a competition for that was held in the early 90s, and in 96 they chose AES encryption, which is what's pretty much used today for everything. Everyone's sort of seen AES in types of encryption that they've used. So that's advanced encryption standard. That's the particular algorithm that won the competition and become the new standard. They've actually started a new process to create a replacement for AES, and that is one of the requirements for that is going to be it has to be quantum computer resistant. So it has to be resistant to being cracked by a quantum computer, because when you look at what a quantum computer can do, if you took a password that would take, with a modern supercomputer, 1,000 years to break. So that means it is having millions of attempts per second at guessing the password, essentially. That process would take 1,000 years doing that continuously to break the password, to go through every possible combination of that password. A quantum computer could do it in a second. So that gives you an example of what quantum computers are going to lead to in terms of this race for supremacy in cyberspace. Because if you've got a quantum computer that can do that, and a government that possesses that technology, they're going to tie that with AI. Imagine what a quantum computer AI learning model could do.
Master key.
You know? Master key. It could do things that human beings can't even comprehend. But it's not a doomsday scenario, because if you look at it, there is a lot of positivities that are going to come out of it. We're going to see revolutionary technology. We're going to see things change for the whole world for the better. It's not just going to be all negative. But the question is going to come with breaking algorithms and all these different things. What's going to happen to the old encryption? Desk encryption was in the 70s. A modern computer today, look, mobile phones today, in fact, are more powerful than some of the supercomputers they used to have. So that's how old desk encryption is, and that still hasn't been fully broken. They've broken like a tiny few sections of it, but overall it's still there. So quantum computers are going to change a lot, but ultimately I think that if you have a quantum computer moving forward, and that's going to create algorithms and create encryption, there's going to be ones that are trying to break it. It's going to be it's just like computers now, just far more advanced. But in relation to the question, what is going to happen to a nation who gets the supremacy in that? Well, they're going to be able to do things at a far higher level than the rest of the world.
Right.
But that in itself means that other nations are going to follow. It'll be almost like an arms race.
Nuclear arms race, yeah.
Yeah, and you know what you said earlier, I think is basically true, and this is something no one wants to hear, but I don't think this is avoidable. I think when we discover more efficient ways of living that makes life easier, we always go for it, regardless of what the cost is. If the efficiency and the pay is far more obvious and immediate than any costs, which may be more long-term or more subtle, we will always go for that which pays straight away. And so, you know, as Natalie was saying, I do think we're heading into something, a very, very interesting age, and no one quite knows what it's going to look like. But also, as you said, let's remember, you know, a lot of good. I'm not advocating for all of this, but it always happens that a lot of good things come from these kinds of things as well. Life for many people, maybe for all of us, will get easier, but there is always a cost. I think, for example, of the Industrial Revolution, no one really wants to go back to pre-industrial times. I mean, you've got some who would, and every now and then I watch Facebook videos of a guy who built a log cabin in Alaska back in the 1960s and 70s. And I think, wow, wouldn't that be fantastic? But at the end of the day, no one really wants to go back to pre-industrial times, even though the transition from pre-industrial times to industrial times was very, very traumatic, and you know there was a lot of loss. You know, we are all caught up in historical forces, and one of those forces is the march of technology. And if it's going to go backwards, it will be because it kind of self-destructs. And that might be one of the things that we're heading into.
One of the big worries about this is Australia's on the cutting edge of this technology right now with regards to not the AI and supercomputer stuff we're behind, more the digital ID stuff, because they're not rolling really this out in many places in the West right now, but they want to. Australia's one of the first, which means coming up with solutions to this is actually kind of on our community to work it out. We often have the benefit of being a lucky country and late to certain things like censorship, but this one is going to be we're going to be a bit of a testing ground, like with many other things, and
including the hacking,
including the hacking with like Optus and Gladys, which her involvement there. Correlation doesn't mean causation. All right, settle down, everyone. But I'm just saying. But we've got to keep in mind, going back to the article, this is going to be able to help organisations websites prove that you're over 18. Now, they want to, as I alluded to earlier in the UK, they want to start educating younger people because they recognise the internet is not it's not working to the government's advantage in with TikTok, with a lot of these social media organizations, kids are getting more conservative. Kids are voting. Nigel Farage, as we covered in the UK with the UK elections, Labor came first with those under 25. Then I do believe it was Reform UK after. And it's like, oh, what's that about? Because they're only going to get more conservative.
And look at in Germany, I think it's people under the age of 21, the top polling party is AfD, Alternative for Deutschland. So if you look at that, hang on a minute, this is a kids who got raised in the Green Revolution and all the Marxist institutions, the Marxist teachers teaching them all of these self-hatred things. And if you look at the Greens vote amongst that age group, it's actually low. It's the national average. It's no higher. So you go, well, hang on a minute, what's happening here? And it is because of the internet. It's because people are being exposed to more information than they ever have before. If you look at these younger people, they are more willing to seek out and get all of the information before they make a decision. And that is a very, very powerful thing, because then they get to have a better understanding of how things really are. They're not as sheltered as previous generations. They make out that they are, and they might be sheltered from going out in the real world, but in terms of being exposed to information, the younger generation is the most exposed to information out of any generation in human history. And
Really?
and it's having the effect that no one really suspected it would.
They are also they've been pushed so far to the left from places like universities, where they're indoctrinated with what pronoun are you and all the rest of it, that they're actually rebelling. I think that the pendulum is swinging back from that far left ideology that they're being taught, and obviously not in all of our universities, certain, I'm sure, and it'll take a very, very long time until it's where we would like it to be. But I do believe that the pendulum is swinging back, because like with anything, you force people into a corner and force them to do something like accept, rainbows, LGBTQI, and whatever, the alphabet soup, the pronouns and all the rest of it. Eventually they're going to rebel against it, and I think.
But this is totally new what's going on, and this is why I'm so passionate about this particular topic. What we're seeing is they previously had this market snookered. They previously had kids, both parents working, and in order to raise these kids, you'd had to give it to the state. These 3 kids, you give them to the state, and they'd come home and they'd want to chop their genitalia off, or they'd be spouting all this crap about LGBT or everything to do with regards to, Aboriginal stuff. That's a false, whitewashed history. And it's like, what the hell is this? Why does my kid want to be a communist? Okay, what's next? University. As soon as you know it, it's not your kid. They previously had this snookered. And what's
That's
really
right.
interesting about that is technology has been an amazing thing. I mean, TikTok now, I used to be really worried it would just be full of dancing and everything, and kids being, not focusing on engineering and amazing things going online. But TikTok is now full of people like Bishop Murray, Stoicism, Christianity, and it's like a revolution. It's like a new renaissance for Christianity, and it's and what made the West great. And I see that, and they don't like it, because they previously had this clamped down, and now they're reacting, and it's a closing window for them. They have to bring in some authoritarianism so that the kids don't get access to it. And I think that's what's driving this. California, Victoria, South Australia, New South Wales, they're all looking at banning social media for kids. I believe this is why.
Well, if you look at one of the biggest and most important things to take into account here is why are we seeing this come out of the kids in the way that we are? It's because, let's step back a minute. Look at people 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 300 years ago. People, when you look at their core, who they are, especially if you look at Australians or before when they were in the UK and Europe, if you look at who these people were before all this happened, they weren't. Marxism would never have taken off in the past. They would have gone, what? That's crazy. Why would I do that? That doesn't make any sense. So if you look at it, what is actually happening is they're being exposed to imagery and videos and information now that is triggering something in their subconscious. It's triggering something that is written into them that, their fathers, mothers, grandmothers, grandfathers, all of those people in their heritage, doesn't matter where they're from, it's all their people in their heritage, it's coming out of them. When they see things of the past that look beautiful, it triggers something in them. When they see the old-fashioned photos, it triggers something. When they see all the Christianity, it triggers something in them. Because if you look at a lot of these people who are involved in, say, climate change, I've met a lot of them. A lot of them aren't bad people. They're not bad people. They really aren't. But if you look at their belief in it, it is a spiritual belief. They're filling a void that's in them, that's been in their DNA for thousands of years of their ancestors who have had Christianity, or before that they had paganism. They had some sort of spirituality. And then they come into this modern world where they've had it removed, and they're trying to fill that void. And that's why they go to things like climate change or any of the other Marxist agendas, and they take that on board into themselves. And when they actually do that, that's when they don't actually know who they are anymore. And they're going down this path of what they know is wrong, but they can't put their finger on it. And that's why when they see these young kids who are still impressionable and haven't gone down that path yet, they see something like Christianity and it triggers something in them. Their parents and their grandparents might have been Christian, and it triggers something in them and they remember it. I mean, because people forget, in terms of genetics, but no one else really talks enough about it, but if you look at genetics, everybody has a genetic, material from their parents, their grandparents. You are your grandparents. You are your great-grandparents. You are never going to get away from that fact. They helped make you and what you are. And all their mannerisms, their beliefs, their thoughts, the way that their thought process works, that's in them too. And I think when you look at that and look at why these people are responding to this, it's because it's people before them talking to them. It's through their genetics. Their genetics are being expressed. If you look at some people in the world, they come from a country where it's all very strong people. When they go and lift weights or see weightlifting, they're attracted to it because it's in their genetics to be that way.
When you put them under pressure, it cracks something open.
It does.
That's what's really cool, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Well, if there's generational trauma, perhaps there's generational non-trauma,
Exactly.
that you've got something in the back there, it gets passed down.
Or mimesis, sort of a cultural memory that we all definitely have. And Christianity is a very strong version of it. But it's interesting that, sort of speaking of the very young generation, I mean, we have to also acknowledge that, for example, the Black Lives Matter riots and the modern trans movement probably also wouldn't have happened without the social media either. I mean, you could imagine, for example, someone experiencing gender dysphoria 50 years ago, or even 30 years ago. Who do you tell? Well, you don't tell anyone. And so communities of people who feel this can't be formed. But if you have the internet and social media, you can go anonymous on Reddit or something and say, hey, this is what I'm feeling. And you wake up the next morning, 3,000 people have written and said, hey, I feel the same thing. And communities are born. So, the internet has also given us the certain madnesses of crowds that we're seeing. But it's interesting, the very young generation, the Zoomers, those, for example, born in the 2010s, for them, more conservative takes on the family and Christianity are very exotic ideas because they didn't in any way grow up with them. I was born in 1978, and even when I went to Sunday school as a kid, there were kids in the street whose parents didn't go to church, but they sent their kids to Sunday school. And so the point that I'm making is that sort of Generation X and earlier, they were a generation brought up who got a little bit of Christianity, got a little bit of conservatism, and kind of like you would inoculate someone from I don't want to call these things a disease, they're not, in fact I love them, but like you would inoculate someone from a disease by giving them a little bit of it. Same kind of thing happened, and their attitude to these things was cynical. Oh, I know about Christianity, I want nothing to do with that. Of course they know very little about it, but they think they do. Oh, those conservative gender roles, oh yes, I remember that, I want nothing to do with that. But the youngsters, for them, it's so new. And that's the exciting thing about it. And that's why guys like Jordan Peterson get quite a lot of traction nowadays, and other people get a lot of traction among young people, because these are really new ideas. And in that respect, I see the internet as total game changer. I see Elon Musk as kind of the Donald Trump of the internet. He doesn't care what people think. He's going to do what he wants to do. He's not a creature of the internet technocracy. He's an outsider. He's a cowboy. And it's a very exciting age to be in. And in a sense, I'm kind of pessimistically optimistic about the future. I think actually really good things are going to come. It's just, I think we're going to have to go through some serious pain.
We need to protect Elon at all costs, though.
Yeah.
I think if can you imagine the state of let's say all the events that have happened in the last 6 months. Imagine we didn't have a platform that was helping us, the citizen journalists, the people that are just watching the content, like help us discern what is right from wrong. You see, like, it doesn't matter if Kamala Harris talking about, no tax on tips. They're like, yep, here's the receipts, here's the legislation you passed saying you want to get IRS across your tips. Like, without the free speech, how easy is that to squash? How easy is that?
Well, it was during COVID. That's exactly
they rewrote,
what...
all the other social platforms rewrote the narrative about her being in charge of the border. I don't know if you guys saw that.
The border czar.
Oh, I didn't
She
know
was,
that.
she was called the border czar, and all of a sudden the media came out and said, no, we never called her that. And that was quite interesting. Yeah. And yet all over X, all these comments, border czar.
I think point to note with Elon Musk as well. When he first took over X, there were people who were critical and said, he's controlled opposition, he's just taking over. Oh, look, here's a photograph of him going to a Halloween event where he wore costume as supposedly as Satan or the devil or something to do with Satanism. But it's like, how many people go to Halloween dressed as a devil? It's a common thing that's been in Halloween for, ever since people have dressed up for Halloween. But no one gave him a chance to actually just, let's give him a chance and see what he does. And if you look at his record and what he's done, not his words, his actions are, he has let people back onto X who were banned, who were very controversial, who really, if you look at some of the things I say, you could argue, why is this person really allowed to speak? That is if you disagree with them, of course. But he didn't care. He let them on there and he let them speak. And he doesn't put the algorithm on them, which also censors them from being seen by people. And I think that if you look at that and you look at all the other things he's done with the platform, really what he's doing, you tie that in with Tesla, you tie that in with SpaceX. He wants to make the X phone. Now, if you look at that, what he's really moving towards is creating an operating system for a computer. So he wants to create a Linux-based operating system that's based off, it's going to be called X, based off Linux, And if you look at why would he be doing that, why would he be focused so much on that? It's because his goal was to create X as a technological platform for everything. Think Weyland-Yutani in the movie Aliens, like major corporation that owns literally everything, makes everything that you use and own. And from a good point of view, though, that's what he's trying to do. Because if you look at what Microsoft is currently trying to do, if the newest versions of Microsoft, unless you are a tech nerd and you know how to get around it, they want to require you to have a Microsoft account to even log into your computer. Now, where that's moving to is they want to put your entire computer into the cloud. That means you use their hardware. That means you store all your data on their system. And basically it becomes like Netflix, but for a computer. And you ask, why would they want to do that? Because they can lock you out of it any time that they want. They can go through all of your data and see what's there any time they want. Elon Musk doesn't want to do that. He wants to create a phone that gives the person freedom. He wants to create a operating system for computers that gives person freedom. And if he does all that, ties it in with the Tesla car, he's got robots coming out at the end of the year, Android robots. This is going to move us forward into a future where you have one of the good guys, one of the old school nerds who believes in what the internet and what creation of software and everything was about back in the day, which was for the greater good, helping the community, helping out your mates. That's what it really was about. He is one of those guys. And that is a rare thing now, someone in his position, because if you look at Facebook, you look at Google, you look at Microsoft and even Apple now, all of those companies are not they moved so heavily away from that ideology that it's now warped.
Completely warped.
It's completely warped.
Elon's, I believe he's one of the good guys, and he's all we've got, really. And I've seen changes in Mark Zuckerberg. He's seeing what Elon's doing. And now he's turning conservative as well. And it's just like...
Bro, it looks like he's going to steal your girlfriend. Yeah. Like he's done a full glow up and everything. He doesn't look like an AI.
He's training jiu-jitsu and MMA, and he's hanging around the right people.
I don't know about Mark Zuckerberg.
Or he's worried
still in two minds about Mark Zuckerberg.
He might be worried that Trump's going to win an election.
That's
saying the right
to
thing.
Ben's point, I don't know if you guys remember, if you go back right to the beginning when Elon took over well, now what is now X, and he allowed what was called the Twitter files, and apparently we had Australian Twitter files, which not many people do know about. And you had Matt Taibbi with Freedom of Information looking at what was going on between the American government and Twitter at the time, suppressing the amount of information all through COVID, deplatforming people, particularly people who were actually vaccine injured, so that you wouldn't have this hesitancy. So to put that up as a whole Twitter file, it was like a Senate hearing, or it was amazing to watch and listen. So, for him to have done that was quite an amazing achievement. Imagine what we could do if we had the Twitter files, but the Facebook files or the Meta files, what we discover between Mark Zuckerberg and, the Department of Home Affairs.
Yeah, but Elon, the way I liken it to? I liken it to Elon being like, you've got the Great Wall of China. Each tower is like a different, you've got X, you've got Meta, you've got Meta, Twitter, YouTube, Google, all of them. And one of these towers has basically let the Mongols in. That was X. That was Twitter. So now the line's broken, and now they have to retreat. And the problem is, what's happened is because they've done that, they're gaining the benefit of having a free market, whereas the other ones are now crashing and burning and getting rid of employees. I think Elon Musk is probably one of the most misunderstood people from the freedom community sense. I think a lot of people, as you rightly pointed out, Ben, he's controlled opposition, he's doing the chips in your brain, he's in line with the EV stuff. If you start looking at Elon from the lens of a mad scientist rather than an establishment guy, it'll make a lot more sense. Because I've been following this guy for years before he got X, before he got a lot of these things. He didn't just wake up one day and get X.
No, he didn't.
No.
I saw this radicalization, and just a bit of, these are some of the commentary that I've seen from him before. A lot of it before he actually took on X. He's actually pro-guns. In fact, he truly believes in the Second Amendment. He's South African, got that from his dad. So anyone that understands South Africa, like myself, I was there recently and I could understand the mentality. It explains a lot of his actions. He literally made a company called The Boring Company, and he made a flamethrower. I mean, this is a bloke that loves to do that sort of thing. I don't see many leftists doing that kind of thing. He's against the LGBT agenda, as we saw recently.
With his son.
With his son, who he says, I lost my son to the woke mind virus. In terms of the AI, he said a number of times a few years ago, what we may need is a Second Amendment approach where everyone's got their own AI. This is how his brain is thinking. And on top of that, how is it that the establishment, hates him so much? Because he got X and he got this social platform. They only started attacking him because he broke the line of GARM, who controls social media advertising. And when he put $40 billion down, what did they do? They started attacking free speech. They started pulling ad dollars. He started to say F you. You see the meme culture, it's been percolating into his brain. The way the establishment takes people and controls them is they find someone, let me give you an example, you may have heard of this one. They find someone that maybe invents the water engine. And they try to screw in the screws in different ways, with money, with blackmail material, or they try to kill them, basically. Now, Elon, they can't simply kill him, and we know there have been assassination attempts on him. They can't simply buy him. They can't simply censor him and defame him because he's got a huge mic. He is one of the number one threats in the world right now, and he is not going along with it, which is very much a South African attribute. He does not want to go with it.
That's why so we need to protect him at all costs. I really mean that because, you take him out of the equation, they install someone else as CEO, the shareholders, the left, far left shareholders install a new CEO, and then we're back to square one where everyone's getting, the UK, the censorship we touched on earlier. Can you imagine what they would be doing right now if they had control over X as well?
Yeah, funny you should say that, because sorry guys, I love this panel. Can I just say I love this panel? Well, I don't know what we've done to get this chemical reaction right, but I love it. So on this particular, we were talking about this took the cake in terms of the comment. So in the interview he did with Trump, he said, "We tested the system with 8 million concurrent listeners earlier today. There appears to be a massive DDoS attack DDoS attack. I have no idea about this. Working on shutting down this thing." This commenter wrote, "Only Elon Musk can open a podcast with a cyber attack, win, and then continue on business as usual, and just feel like, anyways, as I was saying,
he's an incredible individual.
Yeah, I think
DDoS.
That's the thing. It's that one of the things he did say in the beginning, though, he didn't know if it was a DDoS or it was so many people trying to join to watch it.
Right.
It was a little bit of, there is patterns in the traffic you can see, and you can see some that are genuine, some that are not. But when you look at the fact that it sort of broke the internet because of all the people trying to watch it, it was pretty good. But one point to note about Elon, that you said he was South African, if you actually read his book and have a look at his book and what he went through as a kid, I believe he went to boarding school. He went to camps where, it's with Boer kids. They're tough. And he used to get beaten up. He used to get bullied and have to fight back. And he's really quite a remarkable man when you actually look at his life. And it allows you to understand him a bit better. This is a kid who was smart, who had to stand up for himself, was bullied, and was in a very tough environment that is South Africa, and Africa in general. It was a very tough place. And this is the guy who's come out and then gotten into tech, and he's trying to push this benefit for the world. Because if you look at, as you said, about the brain chips, I've had people say, oh, no, he wants to put in brain chips. He's going to, it's to control us and all this stuff. No. What people do not understand is human augmentation is, again, like we were talking about before, it's something that is inevitable. It's something that is going to happen whether you want it to or not. And we're going to see chips in brains. We're going to see people with artificial eyes. We're going to see robotic arms. We're going to see robotic legs. People who get in a car accident, their spine is gone. They put a complete robotic spine into where their spine used to be. And people are afraid of it. And for obvious reasons. I mean, it's something that can be used for great bad or great good. But if you look at what Elon Musk is doing, he's taking that chip to help people walk again. People who have had neurological diseases where they're completely destroyed and can't function in society. He's doing this chip as a means to try and help them. And I think that that's a really remarkable thing, because if you look at someone who's a paraplegic or a quadriplegic, if you said we can put a chip in your brain and make you walk again, every single one of them will say yes.
Dementia. How about dementia?
Dementia,
or chronic pain.
Can you imagine that?
And this is the thing, you've hit the nail on the head. The problem with the freedom movement in its entirety is there's a lot of these words of controlled opposition. And I think we've got to start trusting people based on what they're doing, not what they're wearing, and stop acting throughout fear, because everything he has done has shown an incredible fortitude. He's an incredible man. Where would we be without X right now? And the chip, you are completely right, can help so many in a medical system. Like if you've got so many paralysed people, so many Alzheimer's patients, dementia patients, particularly post, a bit controversial, certain medical procedures, you do need something to help these people. We're humans. We need to help each other.
And I think he's extremely smart. I don't think anybody can deny that, even his biggest haters. But he's picked look at all of the businesses he has. He's got SpaceX. He's got
PayPal in the previously, right?
Yeah, he sold out of PayPal. That was one of his first big breaks, I guess. But look at so all of the most important things to human civilization, he's doing it. Transportation, he's got the cars, right? Energy, he's got the green energy. And he recently on that Trump podcast, he spoke about his views on that. He's like, it's not as radical as what they're making out. And
we just can't demonize coal and gas. That's
we need that
because we're relying on it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And then he's got interplanetary plans and to keep the species alive, because if we do get hit by if we split our species in two and one's on Mars and one's on someone has to start doing that. You can't just wake up overnight.
Maybe one's with a Marxist government and one's not.
You can't just wake up overnight and terraform Mars. It just doesn't work that way. But he's all of the things that and AI, of course, and social media. He's got all of the frontiers that a battle whether Marxist government or authoritarian or whichever way you want to look at it, whatever this sort of direction that the evil people are pushing in, he's making sure he has the cutting edge of each of them, right? So these brain chips that we're talking about, I would rather a brain chip that's made by Elon Musk than a brain chip that's made by
Soros.
Yeah,
Gates. Yeah.
So
it's like a vehicle.
Just like the Starlink. If you look at Starlink, I remember hearing over a decade ago, there's a billionaire who wants to make a network for the internet that's satellites all around the earth, so everyone in the world can get access to the internet anywhere for free. And I thought, what a great idea that was. And it was actually Elon Musk, and he did it. And if you look at what he wants to do with the X phone, he wants to have Starlink on the phone. And if you look at the implications of that, that means you would be able to get a mobile phone number through X, through Starlink, that is not controlled by any ISP in your country, not controlled by any telco or any government. So if you were to have a situation like in Brazil where the government's massively cracking down with censorship, if you had an X phone, you would completely bypass all that through Starlink. This is what this guy is doing. He's taking social media, making it so it's protected, then tying that in with internet access so it's protected, on a device that's protected. Like he's making it so you are never going to be cut off from being able to speak or hear information. So what he is doing is actually remarkable for mankind, and it's rare that we get a person who's actually so involved with trying to advance mankind, not just trying to make a dollar or anything like that. He's trying to advance mankind, as you said, put man on Mars, man on the moon. But really, he ultimately wants to get into space mining as well, which is incredibly intelligent. You find an asteroid that's made out of gold, well, I mean, obviously the gold price is going to change.
No, but most useful metal in the world, most best conductor. If there's no supply, problem. But a couple of things about this, and those are great points. I didn't think this was going to turn into an Elon Musk love fest. But it wasn't what I was planning. It wasn't in the agenda. But look, Graham Hood, he uses Starlink. Our own Australian government has botched the internet in Australia. Yeah. He found a way to give the whole of Africa access to the internet just with these satellites. The idea that our own editor in South Australia, he uses Starlink as well to do his job because our government, once again, botched the internet. He was the one that sued the e-safety commissar. He said she's the commissar when she was trying to censor the bishop stabbing, around the world. He was the one that sued him. It wasn't Clive. It wasn't anyone else. God bless Clive. He funds many other lawsuits, but not this one. But this was a former Twitter employee that was trying to interfere in Australia's democracy and the world's democracy. And the last thing I'll say, he's talking about the risk of population collapse. Whereas the globalists are saying, no, you shouldn't have more kids. He's actually saying, no, we need more kids. We're not going to get to 9 billion. We've got to, that's huge. That's
massive. I mean, you look at Korea. I think Korea's got the lowest, or South Korea, they've got the lowest birth rate in the world. And it's very, very sad because if you think about, say, 2060 or 2080, you might not have South Koreans anymore, or they're so small that they're such a minority. No one ever encounters them or deals with them.
I think the birth rates.
Doesn't Japan have a visa for breeding? A breeding visa?
No, I saw that and I thought this has to be a stitch up. Sure enough, it was, but I thought whoever did that as a stitch up, that's a classic. That's when you see people who make up misinformation, but they've obviously done it for the lols.
How does that work? I'm just anyway, I won't go any further. There's probably kids listening.
No, but the birth rate's plummeting in a lot of the countries. Yeah. So I mean, he's
China,
he's spot on. Yeah, Singapore, Australia.
One place that's not going down though is sub-Saharan Africa, 4.1 birth rate. Niger, that's just had those big problems with France, and they've kicked the French out, and it's basically almost breeding to a civil war. They have a birth rate of 7. I think it's 7.1. So this is just if you compare that to, say, I think South Korea's, I think from memory, is something like 0.63 or something really low. So if you look at that level of birth rate, remember back to the 80s and 90s, there was famines and massive problems in Africa. Then all this money got given to them from NGOs, and now they have a birth rate that's skyrocketed. So this is what you have to sort of look at, is what are they doing right that we can look at in terms of fixing the birth rate in the rest of the world? Because they're obviously doing something right. If they're having 4.1 birth rate in sub-Saharan Africa, in countries that aren't as well off as the Western world, what are they doing right that's working? Because they are having a lot of children.
Because talking about the US and what's been going on with the censorship and all the good Elon's been doing, this is what it looks like with regards to things not going so well. So I wanted to find a story where Kamala Harris was talking about, when she basically stole Trump's no tax on tips policy. So naturally I went to Google. I searched Kamala Harris takes Trump tips policy. And it took me 7 slides. Here, I've got it here. And in the first 7 slides, it's nothing but establishment media. CNN, MSNBC, Times Magazine, Morning Star, Associated Press, Reuters. It's literally like that all the way through. Not even Fox News makes a feature. Axios, USA Today, all the way to about 7. And I still then you see Fox. and Sky News Australia. What I was trying to find was Breitbart. So I had to manually search Breitbart, and then what I was looking for, and it came up. Biden, Harris, the IRS, which is the ATO, expansion purposely cracked down on workers' tips. What is it that's happened on this? Julian, you were alluding to it before. Did you want to elaborate on that?
Oh, yeah. It's just, they create a narrative, and when they can't control it because people are bringing up the receipts, as the young folk call it, when they see it slipping out, that's when they try and double down and try and take control over, what the narrative is. And you've got other platforms, and the fact checkers were saying that we got this part wrong. The fact checkers fact checked themselves to backpedal on Kamala Harris when it came to the border, the border czar component, and then they're sort of doing the same thing on this. They're sort of just they're covering for it. No, she didn't support this, or no, it's just they're trying to steer the narrative because people are saying, no, we've got the receipts. Here they are. She signed into legislation. Because
it was months ago. It was months ago, right? Trump, I vividly remember watching the video of him out and about, because he actually does that, whereas Biden doesn't. Someone gave him a dollar or something. He signed it, and he said, this is going to be more valuable like this. And he said, no tax on tips. No tax on tips.
Yeah, that was about 2 months ago.
Yeah. 2 months ago. And now, Kamala's stolen it. She didn't tell a Democrat operative. So the establishment media had been so busy attacking Trump's policy and how costly it would be and how it wouldn't work and this and that. And then she comes out of this and blindsides everyone, shoots from the hip, doesn't tell her team, and now they're scrambling and being like, oh, no, it's actually the best thing ever. It's like better than sliced bread and this and that.
You've got the Republican nominee saying no tax on tips, and the Democrat nominee, albeit that's controversial.
Yeah.
So why not put it in? What are we waiting for?
Exactly.
Waiting for the election?
She's like, if I get elected,
she's going to improve it. Yeah, so she's going to improve life
on day one
when she gets elected. But the fact that she hasn't done a goddamn thing, while she's been there, that's a different story. Yeah. It's just astronomical.
It's day 20 for her.
It's not day one. It shows how powerful Trump's policies are and how powerful influence that he actually has. He's influenced the Democrats and Kamala Harris to actually adopt his policies. That's phenomenal. I mean, if you look at from a
she's gonna be wearing a MAGA hat soon.
Yeah, she'll wear a MAGA hat soon, and she'll start talking like Trump too when she insults him. It's just, this is from a political point of view, it's capitulation from their behalf. But what it shows that it's so popular with the public, these kinds of policies, that they're trying to now not only take them on, but make out that they're theirs exclusively, and the opposition copied them from them. And that's just alarming, because you look at that from a gaslighting point of view. They're trying to gaslight the public. No, we created that first, and they try and rewrite the narrative and erase it.
Well, they're actually treating the public as complete idiots. What they don't realise is the public does have a memory. We do have memories. Not all of us are brain dead.
And the internet's forever. Sorry.
Yeah, but it is. It absolutely is. So, you can't treat the public like that, because it will be a backlash of some sorts.
One of the things that I fear that might happen in terms of the future with AI and stuff like that. Obviously, I think AI is going to be a force for good in the future. But one of the big concerns that I have is, what if you get a point where it'll censor something that happened? Like, so say Trump did get assassinated. It then censors that he ever existed, tries to remove it from all media, from all internet, scrub it clean. And then when people talk about it, what are you talking about? And he never existed. There was never a Donald Trump. I mean, and people think that that's a crazy sort of sci-fi conspiracy theory. But in terms of technology in the future, and some of the tech people I've spoken to, not very nice ones, by the way, they've actually said that that's a goal of theirs, to memory hole things from the internet and from people's minds, and gaslight them that it never happened, or another type of event happened, like, Germany won World War II, like stuff like that.
This has been going on throughout history, so this will be a lot easier with AI, but the history is always written by the victors. What's the actual history is, debatable, but...
Yeah. Sorry, Stephen, I was going to ask, as a historian, to what extent do you worry that, when you're studying history, the sources you have in front of you might be missing, like, double that, and you don't have that, and what you have in front of you has been carefully cultivated?
Well, I mean, the problem with every historian who wants to go to archives and things like that is to find enough of a range of documents to give you an objective view of, what actually happened. And right now, pretty much all documents can be accessed in hard copy. You can literally go into a place, hold the documents. I've done it so many times, take photos of it and that kind of thing. The thing that is eventually going to happen, because it's so efficient, is that all the documents will be digitized. And the days of people going into archives, and sometimes it's very expensive. The last time I did it, I actually went to Berkeley, California. It cost thousands and thousands of dollars for me to do it. Of course, I wouldn't do it if they digitized them all. But then you're back to the same old problem. The information is much easier to get, but it's also much easier to switch off. And so that's just another issue that historians and journalists as well are going to have to deal with. With the Harris, I mean, a lot of me says Trump's not going to win because if it seems too good to be true, it probably is, which is not a strong argument. That just speaks to me psychologically. But I just want to say regarding Harris, I'm not aware of her actually having done a press conference yet. It's nearly 3 weeks.
Not a single interview.
She hasn't done a single interview. And basically, she's still in the honeymoon sugar rush period. Her numbers have definitely surged. But I'm still looking. I'm looking at the battleground states as indicated on Real Clear Politics. Trump is still ahead in all the battleground states except for 2. Now, although Harris does have a larger national vote rate at 47.9, whereas Trump is on 47. That's probably largely because of California. When you look at how it all cashes out in the Electoral College, which is where it counts, Trump is on 219 Electoral College votes. Harris is on 208. Trump is still ahead. And here's the thing I also discovered today. Surveys have been carried out about what people think of Harris's economic competence. And one survey carried out by the Financial Times Michigan Ross indicated that 42% of Americans believe Trump's policies will leave them better off financially, while only 33% think Harris's policies will do. And at the end of the day, it's about the economy, stupid. And if people think that they're going to do better under Trump, then he has got a very strong chance of winning, assuming it's not rigged. And they are already trying to rig it, just like they did in 2020. And memory holding news stories is a way of rigging it, and also assuming that the Republicans will get out there and vote.
I remember when we had the 2020 election, in terms of when we talk about memory holding stuff, when people woke up and saw all these victory speeches from Joe Biden and they had the cars and there's no one in the audience and all these very strange setup, that was a classic example of it. They were trying to make out this is what happened and it was always going to happen this way. And people were sitting there scratching, hang on a minute, I went to bed and Trump was ahead, now I'm woken up and he's lost. What
Just like
happened?
Venezuela. See, it was a legitimate election in Venezuela.
Yeah, legitimate election and
same curve.
Shape of the curve.
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing: you talk to a data scientist, and we have a data science business. We have Learn Options AIs. We employ data scientists. You talk to a data scientist and you show them that curve, and they're like, "Oh, that's like 3 standard deviations." I mean, that's basically impossible. Statistically speaking, it's not possible for the curve to change the way that, when it's moving on a certain trajectory, it can move slightly up or slightly down when you have a data set that's as big as the American population of voters. It just doesn't move that way.
It doesn't pass the sniff test, does it? It never did in the first place.
I remember one of the things I've seen that's come out, though, that's sort of a positive thing. I think it was the governor of Virginia released an executive order the other day, which was basically to regulate the elections, paper-only ballots, voters must show ID, all of these regulations, including voting machine calibrations and auditing by third parties, and that's at any time and throughout the day, I believe. So he's done all these election reforms in one pen stroke, And that gives great hope to the fairness of the election in the state of Virginia, because that was one of the states that got hit pretty hard last time by some very questionable data coming out of those states. But this is one of the things that's already happened, and it's happened with with an executive order. So will we see more of these as we lead up to the election? And that gives great hope that there's going to be a fair election, because that's what you want to see. You want to see a fair election where people can vote the way that they want. So it's very hopeful.
I remember back in 2021 or 2, I remember Nigel Farage doing a tour around America. He was trying to help revitalise the morale over there because it was in the gutters. One of the things I was really encouraged by the last probably 12 months is seeing how Americans have picked themselves up despite a blatantly fraudulent election that was not held properly. I mean, what we saw in Pennsylvania, more ballots going out than there were. I mean, these things were egregious in Wisconsin, in Nevada, and I remember covering it at the time because I have trauma from it, and that's 2 elections now because I was on Hillary's side in 2016, and so watching this drag out over, it wasn't election day, it was election quarter, because it went forever. And now seeing that they're like, you know what, we have to overwin. That's what the Republicans are saying. You know what, we're not going to have a country if we don't win.
Can't be 50-50.
Too big to rig.
No.
They're not going to win an election.
They're acknowledging it. They're like, okay, but we have to do
One thing to point out too is with the Dominion voting machines, which is they use voting machines not just to count paper ballots, but they also have computer-based machines where you actually cast your ballot. And that they have been analysed so many times, the actual whole machine, the software in the machine, all the way down to BIOS level. And what they found in some of the machine, these security researchers, was it was vulnerable all the way down to BIOS level, which means the very core of the computer's hardware. Doesn't matter what firewall or what antivirus or any other thing you run. If you've got access to that, you've got access to a tremendous amount of information. You basically can own the entire system.
Then be careful saying that you're going to be fact-checked.
Oh, yeah.
You know how much I care about those fact checks.
Fact checkers.
I know. Remember when I said it?
Let them fact check me.
Well, they sued Fox News, didn't they?
That's unbelievable.
But on that topic...
No, they sued Clay Clark.
But on that topic, do you guys remember that during the 2020 fallout from the election, you would be censored, you would be taken off YouTube for saying it was stolen? That was deemed misinformation. And that's the insidious thing about this term misinformation. It actually stops political speech. And political speech is the very speech that the doctrine of free speech was kind of devised to protect. Because if you're going to have governments accountable to the people, people need to be able to talk to one another. People need to be able to talk to the government and tell them what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong. And so this whole misinformation, I mean, imagine being accused of speaking misinformation because you say the 2020 election was rigged because the media got behind it, the Zuckboxers got behind it, Soros was involved, the courts didn't even bother looking at a lot of the cases brought to them, the rules were gerrymandered beforehand to make it as easy as possible for voting fraud to take place. All facts. They're all facts, and yet it was deemed misinformation. And that's what happens when you give governments the power to use those kinds of concepts. They will always use them in a way skewed to the favour of whoever is in power.
There's a good chance they manufacture another pandemic between now and then.
Well, they're trying to. The WHO's trying to.
Well, it doesn't have to even be a pandemic. It can be a giant hack attack. You know, like we just...
Didn't they just try that already?
We had CrowdStrike happen. Yeah. So there's lots of other things they can do. Giant disasters, you know, if you were really trying to... Escalate a war. I mean, there's lots of disasters that could happen between now and the election, which no one wants to see, because it would be devastating, I think, for the whole world if we didn't actually have an election, or there was somehow interference because of events in the world. I don't think it'd be a good thing.
No, definitely not. I mean, if you've got Harris and her lovely VP who was running around with porches during COVID paintballing people, I don't know if you saw footage of that. I thought that was disturbing.
The stolen valor guy.
Yeah.
He had the police paintballing people on porches. It was disturbing footage.
I saw that footage. Yeah, I saw that footage. And they're not even doing anything wrong. They're just literally sitting on their porch looking, get inside your house. And they're like, what? Excuse me? And then they just start getting paintballed. It's like, what
in God's name? What free country is that? Normal.
It's not.
Elon raised something that I didn't know about, which was Kamala's father was like, I can't
Marxist.
Actually, a communist.
Communist economist.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. I was surprised. I thought I kind of knew she was a communist, but I didn't know her father was like the president of some communist society.
Well, she's an idiot. So, we saw she was an idiot. that should have been that giveaway, right?
Well, the laugh says it all. Plus, you've got to state the obvious. Ukraine, the small country, was invaded by Russia, a big country.
And also just the sheer incompetence. That just sums it up perfectly. Typical communist.
Yep.
So, will America go for her?
Yeah, well, look, I get worried sometimes because I see Americans being like, you know what? She just speaks my language.
I know, exactly.
I'm like, I have no doubt about that. You know,
cackle language.
The cackling.
Never underestimate the historical force of stupidity.
So, Stephen, you mentioned censorship. I wanted to show you guys something because I don't usually complain, but I sometimes do. Now, this is censorship. Now, this account was nuked during the Dominion stuff because of the Dominion stuff, and it has not grown since February 2022, pretty much. It has not grown. That it is just bubbled along, and this is the exact same equation that they do. It's not like we're not getting views. We've gotten tens of millions of views across the platforms, but this is what they do on Instagram, on Google, through YouTube. This is what they're doing so that we can't reach new people. It's the same people, and they kneecap me, but they amplify accounts that are obviously against me. Despite that, we are still getting 900,000 viewers every week. So imagine if they actually removed the bags from us from what we're doing. So about 30% of our viewers are actually now on safe platforms because you guys have been moving to Rumble, Telegram, X, which is now, Twitter, which is now safe. So please, click the link in the description and join us there. The last story I wanted to cover so that we can all get everyone back to their families is the NAPLAN results. Natalie Doomer, what is going on? We're spending more money than ever in Australia on our education system. The ABC News, in a rare bout of honesty, have covered this correctly and said our NAPLAN results reveal that 1 in 3 students are not meeting basic literacy and numeracy expectations. What is going on here? Because I was looking at this graph and it is shocking.
It is scary. It is absolutely frightening. So we're spending more and more money, and now they're asking for more money again to do what? We are dumbing down our children. And when you look at the NAPLAN, it was brought out in the early 2000s. When you look at 2016 and 2017, the national minimum standards was 90%, not 66. How did that happen? Are we teaching our children diversity, equity and inclusions? Are we concentrating on the 72 pronouns and ignoring mathematics and English? The basic knowledge is so important to have functioning human beings in our society, and yet we've got this coming about with the amount of money that we are spending in the education system. Now, is it because we've got the Department of Education with predominantly Marxist views? I actually don't know what they are teaching our children.
I think this would have something, at least some part, to do with the fact that learning from home is probably about as effective as working from home. And if you're a small business owner, you know what I'm talking about. All these businesses that sort of, you can work from home and all this kind of stuff. It's kind of, you cannot produce great results as a business having everybody just working from their... And the main reason for that is you need collaboration. You need to foster learning by osmosis. In our business, we train people by just letting them observe others, in their natural habitat. It's like, it's the same thing for learning from home.
It's like doing a conversation here in person versus a Zoom.
That's right.
You miss the magic,
I think you're heading towards the COVID and the fact that
learn from home. Correct. Yeah.
Yeah,
but
sure.
I think that certainly hurt it, but I think it was declining before that. So I'm not saying it's exclusive to that as an issue, but that certainly didn't help. I think that set back a lot of students.
But funnily enough, did you say that? I think it was a school in Auburn that had the best results. And yet they were the most like that. Those LGAs were the ones that were the most locked down, the most, the southwestern LGAs. And yet a school in Auburn has got the best NAPLAN results, or the most improved NAPLAN results. And what they've been doing, and I think this is absolutely pivotal, is they've been inviting parents to help reading with the children, which is what we used to do back, 20, 30 years ago anyway.
Yeah, me too, yeah.
And that's where we have to go back to. We have to go back to parents coming in, or some sort of teaching staff coming in and helping the students one-on-one and actually reading, giving them that love for a book, not sticking their faces into a computer screen. And the same thing with things like mathematics. NAPLAN went onto the digital form. I don't know if it still is digital or whether they're actually writing, but there is a direct connection between your hand and your brain. If you're writing, you actually remember so much more. So why are we going onto this computer system when these kids need to know how to work out a simple problem? And the result of all this poor education is you will go to a shop, and if you're paying for anything for cash, and I'm sure you guys have been through this, if something costs $8.25, you give them $10.25. They don't know how much change to give you. These young kids in shops have no idea how to calculate basic maths. Yeah. It's a real problem.
And I remember, I've had similar situations. Go to the pub and you want to get a pepperoni pizza, and there's not an actual listing for a pepperoni pizza on the menu. You say to the young person working there, I have a pepperoni pizza, thanks. And they go, oh, sorry, there's no pepperoni pizza on the menu. Can I have a margarita with pepperoni? Oh, yep, I can do that on the computer screen. Or you go to a chicken shop and you say, I'd like 6 chicken strips, please. Oh, sorry, we only have 1, 3 and 5. Okay, well, you can press 1 and 5, or you can press 3 twice. You get 6.
It's a real issue.
It's actually we laugh at it, but it's actually incredibly concerning. You have a lot of employers saying, we're getting kids come out here who don't even know how to wipe down tables. They don't know how to sweep a floor. They don't know how to do anything. But they know about all this useless agenda with Marxist sort of related stuff that doesn't help them in the real world. They don't even know how to balance basic money, balance their bank account. It's a disaster, but it shows how much of a failure our education system has been, because no longer do they take children and teach them how to think. They teach them what to think. And they teach them the wrong thing. All they do is take them, memorise and obey, and all truth comes from authority.
And
that's what they
no critical thinking.
No critical thinking.
They have literally lost the whole process of critical thinking. Where has that gone? I know in my profession, just in my profession, when you go to a surgery where there's several dentists, if it's not in a book, it doesn't exist. Like, I'm sorry, a person cannot be pigeonholed within a box. You need to be able to actually say, okay, what is going on with you? And perhaps it's different to the person next to you. It could be different to, we're all different people, where there's males, there's females, there's, different races. How do you pigeonhole everybody into what it says in a book?
Oh, exactly. It makes me homicidal, because when I see what they're doing with education, they're spending more than ever. There's a lost opportunity cost. There's a lost opportunity cost. If you're teaching kids about the why your country's bad, LGBT stuff in the school, they're not learning about Victoria Cross winners, the sort of thing that, Richard Kalila. It's like name me one Victoria Cross winner in Australia. I challenge you, anyone that's listening. And if the answer is no, that's a problem, especially the young people listening. And it's not your fault. But the people that have a vote, we need to take back the education industry.
And that's the positive. So you're thinking about the positivity. We should be teaching kids what they can achieve, not that they're really bad because they're white.
Yeah.
Or, all this critical race theory. And we really have to get back to positive reinforcement in the education system rather than this negativity that they're all exposed to.
I think also with teachers as well, they're so overburdened now with nonsense, bureaucratic crap they've got to do, filling in all these reports, all these forms, and spending hours doing all these lesson plans and reports on where a child is up to in their teaching. So if another teacher takes over, they know where it's at. Basically, teachers don't even have time to teach anymore. They're bogged down with all of that information. They're giving class numbers that are too high, too many students to worry about, no assistance from a teacher's aide or anything like that. And that is why we're seeing education decline. They have all these smart boards now that have got computer screens in them and everything. And all these kids have computers and stuff like that, yet we have the worst results in history. And I think that that's very, very concerning.
I agree with a lot of that. I would probably shift the focus away from what's going on in the school so much, although I do think the curriculum is overcrowded for sure, and there's a lot of woke garbage in it. But I think there are two serious problems going on. One of them is a lot of more kids than ever are coming from really bad family situations, and so they're just dealing with a lot of stress at school. They're coming from broken families, and that's just not, and the mental health problems that go with a really bad family situation, that's just not conducive to learning. And the second, and I think this is actually probably the big one, their brains are literally broken by iPhones. Like, they cannot concentrate anymore. They are so used to the dopamine rushes from scrolling on their iPhones and playing highly addictive video games, and also sugar. And there are studies on all this. You cannot win their attention for more than a few seconds in class because they're just not used to having to concentrate on things they're not interested in. So I think actually technology has a lot to do with this, and also just the state of the family. Two parents working these days, so you don't have someone with the time to help the kids at home. A lot of parents are just indifferent, they don't care, and then you've got the problem of broken families. I actually don't think it's something that's primarily going to be fixed from within the school. Although you do have Burblesing in England. What's her name? Catherine Burblesing, who runs a grammar school there. And she's had massive success by banning iPhones. They're just banned. And that's been really positive. But then the problem is the damage that they do to your brain when you're out of school. So I actually think a lot of this is literally kids are damaging their brains.
Good point. Good point. I think paper and pen is probably a lot better.
and as Jonathan Haidt says in his latest book, whose title I've forgotten, but it's on the impact of technology and iPhones and social media on kids, basically no iPhones before the age of 16. And you'd want to say 18, but hey, that could be a losing battle. But they are rewiring our brains, the iPhone.
It's interesting you say that too. You speak to any chiro, and they'll tell you they have kids coming in the door. And I saw photographs of this. There was actually like information posters on the wall showing vertebrae in a neck that had actually gone into a bending fashion. I said, what's this? Is this an old person? No, that's a young person under the age of 18. I go, what's it from? Looking down at iPads, looking down at their phones. And because they're developing, as they're doing this, their actual structure of their neck, the vertebrae, changes into a bad posture permanently because they're always looking down at their phone. And then it becomes something that the chiro has to deal with, this new condition from the modern technology.
Happy days.
Yep.
Anyways, was it The Righteous Mind or The Anxious Generation?
The Anxious Generation,
right,
that's the
from
one.
Jonathan Haidt. I've got another book here which I've mentioned before. There's a Coddling of the American Mind.
Great book.
Yeah, really, really good book.
Yeah.
Anyways, guys, did you have any final questions, stories that you wanted to bring up before we finish up the show?
Can I say I loved you answering a viewer's question. I would love to see more of that.
A viewer's question on here?
Yeah, I'd love to see more sort of interaction with the viewers. I really enjoyed that actually.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it was a great question.
Yeah, it was a great question. Yeah, the guy that asked the question is a little bit of an idiot, but that's okay. But, no, I'm joking. It was Rami. Rami sent it in, but no. Look, I want to get everyone onto Rumble so that we can actually do that. I want to get the questions from one place so that it's streamlined, and that way, if you guys want to access us or ask questions live on the show, I love that. And I think that's my point about democracy, online social media. We need more people directly asking questions, getting answers, sharing information, so we make less mistakes. But guys, I have thoroughly enjoyed having you out here. We're a little over 2 hours right now with the podcast, but I'm looking forward to having every single one of you back again, and covering more things. There are crazy things happening next week. We've got the Democrat National Convention. It's been astonishing seeing how all the Democrats in lockstep have basically got their marching orders. Kamala's our chick. We're going to stack it. We're not even going to do a primary like we did with Bernie Sanders and Hillary in previous elections. And they are pretty much moving forward with her. The censorship's kicked up, as we've seen. Everything going on with misinformation and disinformation in Australia has picked up. The UK are trying to censor the American internet. It's insane. It's insane, and I'm here to help you meander through it. That's why I built the Ark podcast so we can do it. So if you enjoy it, give it a share, give it a like. If you want to find any one of these phenomenal people, you can click the link in my in my bio or in the description of this video, and you can actually see all the people that we have on the show. If you want to donate to help keep the lights on and fund the camera guys we have here, you can scan the QR code there. As much as, you know, $5 a month, guys, it makes a huge difference. I'm heavily reliant on you guys, and very soon I will be coming out with material for the election so that you guys know who to vote for, even though we've got some bad choices. Who are the worst bad choices? And yeah, guys, I really appreciate you guys coming on the show. It's been phenomenal, and I think we're giving the mainstream media a real run for their money. 900,000 views a week is nuts. I was stoked when I did it a couple of days ago.
Kudos to you, Joel.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you, Joel.
And this is the most
thank you,
impressive
guys.
studio I've ever seen. This is, this is truly the Ark.
Yeah. Now, look, again, I'm at your disposal, guys. I'm just here to get your information that maybe we can't get you onto the mainstream media. I just want to get that to everyone. I mean, your information on loan options, Ben's information on hacking, Natalie's information on the medical industry and what's going on with the grassroots, and Stephen's information on education industry and how we can reform it. There's so many competent people out there. I just enjoy giving you guys the mic. I obviously don't know everything, but I feel like together we can actually get Australia on a better track, and that's why I do it. Thank you, everyone. Thank you very much. God bless you all. I'll see you soon, and please give this a share. Take it easy. Bye-bye.